So we're all ready to go, and I'll just start, and then we'll be turning the chair over to Councillor Carr, who is the Deputy Mayor. So I'm going to call the special council meeting of Tuesday, September 11th, 2020 to order. And of course, we want to recognize that this is a very tragic day for much of the world due to the tragedy on September 11th. So for council, for the purposes of confirming we have quorum, please ensure that your video is turned on. This special council meeting is convened by electronic means as authorized under Part 14 of the Procedure Bylaw, the City of Vancouver Electronic Meetings Regulation, and the Order of Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General, the Province of BC, Emergency Program Act, Ministerial Order Number M192. As such, council members are participating by phone, and as chair of this meeting, I am also participating by phone. The special council meeting has been called for the purpose of discussing options for emergency COVID-19 relief for unsheltered Vancouver residents. It's a motion that I'll be introducing shortly for discussion. Please note if my connection is lost during any portion of this meeting, we'll recess this meeting until my connection is restored. However, once the chair is turned over to Councillor Carr, that will be over to her for these chair responsibilities. If council loses connection during any portion of the meeting, we'll need to recess the meeting until the connection is restored. If council loses connection during the voting process, we have staff on hand to facilitate getting the councillor back online quickly while we suspend the voting process. Contact information has been circulated. Please ensure to ensure that quorum is maintained through the meeting. Please let the clerk know if you're going to leave the meeting. The live stream will continue with audio only. Presentations and vote results will be projected to viewers when available. Lastly, we have speakers who will be providing comments to council by phone, and the moderator will assist in patching the speakers through when their turn comes up. Of course, we acknowledge we are on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. We thank them for their generosity to all who live, work, and play on these lands. I also want to thank Vancouver City staff who are just always do a great job, but have been doing an amazing job through this COVID-19 pandemic. Clerk, can we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Stewart is in the chair. Councillor Carr.
Here.
Councillor Dejanova.
Present.
Councillor Fry.
Here.
Councillor Swanson.
Here.
Councillor Hardwick.
Present.
Councillor Wiebe.
Present.
Councillor Boyle.
Present.
Councillor Dominato.
Present.
Councillor Bly.
Present.
And Councillor Kubiang. Councillor Kubiang. You have quorum, Mayor Stewart.
Thanks very much. The public is strongly urged to listen to the proceedings via this website and to follow along on Twitter at VanCityClerk. That's the handle for updates on the progress of the meeting. The meeting is also being live streamed via YouTube. The link is also tweeted out on at VanCityClerk. Any comments on agenda items can be sent to council using the web form on the city's website, and the link to that form will be tweeted out on at VanCityClerk. Our business for the special council meeting is to discuss the motion I brought forward entitled Emergency COVID-19 Relief for Unsheltered Vancouver Residents, and I'm asking that Deputy Mayor Carr take over as chair while I participate in the discussion. So I'll be handing the chair over to Councillor, and now Councillor Leader Carr.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. So I'll continue with the proceedings. Mayor, you have 2 minutes now to introduce your motion, and council will have 1 minute each to ask clarifying questions of the mayor.
Great, thanks so much, councillors and staff, for convening in this special meeting. Really, in my mind, it's clear that we're at a tipping point, not just in Strathcona, but in terms of how we support all our vulnerable neighbors in this city. I really want to thank council for all their work over the summer months, mostly August, talking to community members, business owners, advocate, healthcare organizers, everybody under the sun, as to how we're addressing this emerging crisis. And we can't really forget why we are here, though, and that's because of what COVID-19 has meant to all of us. Individually, it's been a struggle, but as a city, it's had major impacts, not just here, but right across the entire country and around the world. It's an incredibly stressful time for everyone. I think of folks, parents wrestling with back-to-school responsibilities, businesses that are under strain, but those facing mental health challenges, addiction, and homelessness are perhaps the worst affected of everybody due to COVID. Shelters have been spaced out to reduce capacity due to physical distancing requirements. SROs have banned visitors, leaving many people alone in rooms that we know are often substandard and an increased risk of overdose. We've had our libraries and community centers and other community facilities closed. And now that the summer months are largely behind us, I am growing increasingly concerned that we'll be in a dangerous place with the arrival of cold weather and still no COVID-19 vaccine available. So we've worked too hard on housing, on overdoses, on COVID as a whole city just to watch people become sick again or to watch people become permanently homeless. So we have to do something. And I think the community is in agreement. So my motion outlines 3 options I know we've all thought about. I put it in this place to encourage debate and not to push us towards a particular decision point. The objective of today's meeting is to instruct staff to explore the options that we want to explore, and then to have them come back with costing and the possibility of something, whether or not our options are possible. So. Right. Thanks so much.
Well timed, Mr. Mayor. You do have questions. Councillors, you have 1 minute to ask the Mayor any questions. Councillor Swanson, you are up first.
Would your intention, I just want to ask the Mayor, would your intention with this motion be that we come up with better alternatives for all unsheltered people in the city, not just the ones in Strathcona Park?
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Swanson. I think that what's happening, what we're seeing is more people living rough on the street in this terrible predicament is probably Strathcona is the epicenter, but we are seeing it in almost all neighborhoods across the city, especially north of 16th Avenue. So it really is a broader citywide response to this unfortunate circumstance.
Yep. Councillor Swanson?
That's good, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Moving on, Councillor Hardwick.
Hello?
Councillor Hardwick, you have 1 minute.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, your
sorry, just 1 second. Councillor,
I'm right in the middle of a council meeting.
Councillor Swanson, if you could mute yourself.
Could you call me maybe on the weekend?
Councillor Swanson, could you please mute yourself?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead. We'll restart your timer. Councillor Hardwick, you have up to 1 minute.
Thank you very much. I have 2 quick questions. One is that the motion is entitled Relief for Unsheltered Vancouver Residents. How do you define residents?
Somebody that's living in the city.
For any period of time or anything more?
No, I think anybody living in the city is a neighbor, and we should all be working together. So it's people who are living in the city would be a resident.
And what do you see in terms of in this motion in particular, and the financial implications for the city?
Well, I don't see any financial implications in this particular motion because it's a direction to staff to cost out and to give us the possibility of these options and then reporting back to us. So for us, it will be staff time to do this, but immediate cost implications are nothing. When we get the report back, however, we'll be forced with choices in terms of what the city is willing to put into whatever options we decide to move forward with.
Right, and that is your time. Thank you very much. And we are moving on to Councillor Kirby-Young. Go ahead, Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Kirby-Young, you may be muted. We can't hear you.
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I'm technically challenged right now, but thank you. The question I have for the Mayor is responding to comments you made in the media that, if necessary, the city has to step up and may have to go it alone. I just want to clarify, is that your position if federal or provincial funding doesn't come through, that the city take this on its own?
The purpose of the motion is to get these items costed, these options costed, and for that information to come back to us, and then for us to decide to see what we can do as a city. What kind of skin are we willing to put in this game, if any, as well as to help our negotiations with the federal and provincial levels. So I do anticipate that we need to contemplate that at least.
Okay, that's helpful. And then with respect to the park board and the fact they have a motion to both enforce their bylaw as well as, or to implement their bylaw as well as to not enforce it during COVID and allow people to camp in parks, how do you see us being able to keep people out of parks and green space if the park board is currently debating letting them stay there? And not
a second to answer. Go ahead.
Well, Park Board has their own jurisdiction. They're having their own meetings. We have our jurisdiction, and that's what I'm focusing on with this motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bly, you are up next.
Thank you very much, Chair. I might just have a clarifying question to the motion. It's as written is asking staff to report back on options. Is it the intent of the motion that ultimately some action needs to be taken in sort of the tipping point as you described, that no matter what comes back, that at least some action ought to be taken by council to address the untenable situation that you're speaking of?
Absolutely. I think that this is a whole of government issue that we're facing, and that we are responsible to take at least some action. But we also have to temper that with what we could afford to do and what the other partners are willing to put in to help.
Yes. Okay, great. That's all from me. Thanks so much.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Council. I see that's the end of people on the speakers list to you, Mr. Mayor. So is somebody willing to second the motion?
Second.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Before we begin hearing from Speakers Council, I would entertain a motion, if you are interested, to ask questions of staff. This is not normal, but given...
Councillor DiGenova.
Okay. What I'll do is just call a yay and nay on this. All those in favor?
Chair Carr?
And it would be one round. Yes. Just 1 second. Excuse me. Just 1 second. Yes, Ms. Hagawara? City Clerk.
We need a seconder, please.
Okay, thank you. We need a seconder for a motion.
Right. Okay,
that's great. Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. I want to clarify this would be for one round of questions only to staff. Councillor DiGenova, did you have a question to this? Point of information?
I moved the motion. It was just that we need a seconder. Thanks, Chair Carr.
That's fine. That's good. Yes, and was it a city manager that I heard interjecting there?
Well, thanks, Chair. I know I'd like to make a few remarks before we jump into specific questions of staff, but I guess that will come after this motion is approved.
Yes, I have to go through the approval process, or we do. Okay. I don't see anyone indicating their wish to speak. So, councillors, all those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, we do have a motion that has passed. And over to you, Mr. City Manager.
Thanks, Chair and Council. Really appreciate your taking the time for this meeting. Just wanted to make a few kind of introductory remarks from the staff perspective as we get into the discussion here. Firstly, to say this has been an extremely challenging issue for the neighborhood, Strathcona specifically, but also for homeless people in that neighborhood and across the city. And we, as the staff, really recognize that. And we really welcome this discussion today. Staff do need political direction from council on how you want to handle this issue. So we welcome today's discussion. Our staff throughout the organization have spent a great deal of time working on this encampment and the implications of the encampment throughout the summer, from engineering, fire, police, ACCS, Arts, Culture and Community Services, the Park Board, and many others. As you know, normally for discussion of council motions, we don't have staff in council to speak to questions. However, today I've asked staff from those departments to be here. I think we've got most of them here. And they're not able to, many of them have changed their plans from vacations and whatnot to be here today. So most of them won't likely be able to be on the entire day. So thanks for taking questions first before you get into your debate and discussion. In addition to all the work we've been doing on the ground, I have had a weekly call with the leadership at BC Housing, as well as multiple deputy ministers from ministries, the province, to work toward a solution here. So we've really all been working on this issue throughout the summer. overall, we really support the opportunity to report back on the variety of options as framed up in the motion, and to have a couple of weeks to assess those and to have other options if there are other things that come up, and to report back to council with recommendations and general sense of costing and opportunities for partnership. So if this is passed, we would definitely plan to work with deputy ministers at the province as well as BC Housing. From our learnings from sanctioned encampments in the past, I want to bring this up because that is one of the ideas that's brought up in the motion. Excuse me. Sorry. Staff have recommended against the encampments in the past for a variety of reasons. Health, safety, and generally trying to get people into permanent housing as the primary objective. We've always favored trying to get people inside and have discouraged structured encampments for that reason. Throughout our discussions with our partners in the health sector very recently, the COVID pandemic does require that we take a different approach. While there's overwhelming evidence that living outside has very serious health consequences, we recognize that the immediate risk of COVID transmission and recognize that being outside may be a better option for homeless people in the short term. COVID has really changed a lot, and it may be a better option for people to be outside if we can make it safer and healthier for them while reducing the negative impact on our neighborhoods. So if the motion is passed, we will engage with Vancouver Coastal Health and BC Housing, the province, and other partners closely in the couple of weeks ahead to come forward with recommendations to address these concerns, specifically looking for a location that might have less negative impact on the neighborhood. And as I said, we do have staff here today to answer any questions, and ultimately just want to say thanks to council for having this conversation urgently, and we look forward and stand ready to help implement the recommendations that are brought forward by council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Council, because we are not privy to who amongst staff are on this call, Mr. Johnson, I think what I'd like to do is have all of the questions from council be directed to you, and then it is up to you whether you want to direct those to other staff that you have on the line.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. And sorry for choking up there. It wasn't emotions as much as it was just water down the wrong pipe, I guess. So I'm here and ready to speak and happy to direct questions to staff.
Yeah, and I maybe should also remark it is an actually very difficult day for a number of people today because our air quality is extremely poor, and I have found that people are coughing more frequently, sneezing, etc. I want to reassure everybody that as far as I know, no one has any symptoms of COVID, but that we are in many cases feeling the effects of the very bad air quality in our city right now.
Thanks.
Okay, so you do have speakers starting our questions, and I believe that, Madam City Clerk, I wonder if you can just clarify, but would it be up to 5 minutes to ask questions for councillors?
Chair Carr, that is correct. 5 minutes for council to ask questions.
Great. So again, we'll do one round, 5 questions, including answers from staff. Councillor Swanson, you're first. Go ahead. Councillor Swanson? You may be on mute.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. The manager said that you would be I'm glad to hear that you think you could do this work that's in the motion. That's excellent. You said that you'd be engaging with BC Housing, VCH, and partners. Would you be engaging with the actual people who are homeless to see what kind of management structures they like and that they can live under, and what kind of housing options they want?
Thanks. Yeah, I think you know BC Housing has engaged PHS to be really actively working in this particular camp. So we would be looking to engage with nonprofit partners as well as engage with engage with people directly in the park. As if council does direct us to take some of these actions, ultimately we would be looking to engage with folks to come up with a solution that is favorable.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Swanson. Councillor Dominato, you are next. Go ahead, up to 5 minutes.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and through you to staff. Looking for a couple of updates. I understand that the city proposed a number of sites to the province for the navigation center, which was announced in February as a means to provide low barrier shelter as well as wraparound services to people in need. And I'm just wondering if you have an update on those discussions and around expediting the navigation center, capacity of the navigation center, and timeframes.
Thanks. Yeah, we definitely have looked at many sites for the navigation center. It's a new model for us, and so collectively we are learning. And maybe I'll ask Sandra Singh, the GM of ACCS, to give us a more specific update on where we're at today.
Thanks. Yes, Sandra Singh, General Manager at ACCS. We are very close to, with BC Housing's partnership, to identifying a site for a navigation center, as well as some additional shelter capacity. So as soon as we have something more firm to update council on, we will.
Thank you. And I guess a follow-up to that would be, could that dovetail with a proposal that's obviously on the table or potentially on the table around a disaster relief shelter? Do you see alignment with that? Are they similar, or is there?
So Sandra again. So we would see the temporary disaster relief shelters as proposed in motion and being deliberated by council as a very short-term measure. Our goal is to work with partners to increase indoor housing and shelter options in the community. So as we're able to bring on more capacity in the shelter system and in our housing system, our hope would be to certainly within the context of COVID, to eventually wrap up any outdoor temporary disaster relief shelter. We do, as Sadhu noted, see this as an extraordinary COVID measure within the context of COVID.
Okay. And have we been at the staff level been having conversations with the province and federal governments already about some of these measures around additional acquisition of hotels? Obviously, you've spoken to the navigation center, but around provincial and federally controlled sites, funding. Can we give some context just from a staff perspective? Obviously, the mayor's spoken about the work he's doing.
Yeah, I can jump in, City Manager here. We have been talking most closely with the province and BC Housing as kind of our closest partners. And as I said, kind of in my introductory remarks, direction from council will really help to crystallize what direction we go in to engage in further conversations. So definitely yes on funding with the federal government. That's been asked of them multiple times. Obviously, earlier in the summer, BC Housing and the province spent millions on multiple hotels. And I think there's an understanding that the problem remains. So, coming out of the direction that we get from today and the follow-up discussion we have to narrow down exactly what path we want to take forward here, we will be engaging in further discussions. But we will most certainly be engaging with our partners with today's outcome to assure council that what we do bring forward has the lens of what our partners think about those actions and to what degree they might get behind them and be a partner in implementing them with us.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Dominato. Councillor Kirby-Young, up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two or three questions. The first one is really around our relationship and the interaction with the park board and what strategies the city pursues versus the direction that the park board is going in. And I'm really trying to get a sense of if staff see, say, for example, if it's, expanded shelters or disaster relief type of approach, that being successful in clearing the parks if the park board doesn't determine to pursue an injunction if people are offered an alternative and offered housing but choose not to go or choose to remain in the park. Do you think that would be successful in clearing Strathcona?
Would you mind repeating the question? I'm not sure I fully got the question.
If the intent of this motion is, it doesn't refer specifically to Strathcona or to the 537 people that are fully unhoused out of our approximately 2,000 homeless for the count that came out before COVID. But if people are offered that shelter and they choose not to take it and remain in Strathcona Park, and the park board chooses not to pursue an injunction or move those people on based on some of their past decisions or a motion that they have coming up this Monday that asks for the bylaw on camping and removing tents in the morning to not be enforced, do you see, if the city decides to pursue a direction like this, it actually being successful in clearing the Strathcona Park?
I guess I'll take a stab at that. I think, yeah, as you noted, Strathcona encampment and removal of the encampment doesn't appear to be a direct kind of outcome of this motion. So, you know, if that is what council wants to achieve, that's something. I know there's some amendments coming that makes that more explicit. In terms of, you know, the way I'm reading the motion is that it's really about helping the people that have found that encampment as their place of last resort to reside. And so it's really, the way I'm reading it is that it is about finding more resources for those people so that they can leave the park. And that's kind of, I think, the way that this is being framed without the explicit direction to eliminate the camp.
Okay.
Does that answer the question, or?
Yeah, and because I'm trying to zero in on, and I appreciate that, and that was going to be my other question. Are staff clear on the direction here? Is it to try to support all homeless people? Is it to prioritize Strathcona residents? Is it to prioritize the other unhoused? Is it a combination? Is there clarity for you in direction in the motion and how it's written?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I don't see clarity that the disassembly of the Strathcona encampment is the direction coming out of the motion. The way that I see it is, and maybe the other staff can tell me if they're disagreeing, but that it's really about providing more resources for homeless people and and targeting them to Strathcona. The way that I would read this, Strathcona has grown very, very large and unwieldy, and that the more things we can do to help people find alternative housing, the easier it will be to ultimately to end the camp. And I presume that is a kind of a collective objective, although not directly stated here. So the more viable, safe, healthy alternatives that we can find to get people out of the camp, the easier it will be ultimately for it to close.
Okay, thanks. And then appreciate that. And then another question, in terms of the spirit of trying to provide some immediate relief to both people that are in the encampment or other homeless, as well as area residents in Strathcona, and the amount of time and effort it will take staff to cost out these various options, do we have a sense of which options at this point the provincial and federal governments would be more supportive of, so we could work towards a solution that they would actually potentially fund or support?
Well, yeah, I've been talking to the bureaucrats at the province, and the mayor has been, as I understand it, the mayor's been talking to ministers, both at the federal and provincial level. So that would be a good conversation, a good line of questioning to ask the mayor, because he'll have probably better perspective on their appetite to support some of these types of measures. From the staff side that we've been talking to, I think there's really a willingness and a recognition that we need to partner to address these challenges. And I think coming out of whatever is approved today, we would be looking to engage with our partners at BC Housing, at the province, federal government, to explore which of these options are palatable and that they could support. And that would definitely be part of what we would want to report back on when we come back with to fulfill the request in this motion.
Okay, that's super helpful. Thank you. And I have one last question, and that is really...
actually, you are over time, Councillor Kirby-Young. I am so sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. I'm advancing Councillor Fry now. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Fry.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Question, maybe this is for Ms. Singh. Our homeless count in 2020 obviously happened just before COVID, and we identified about 547 folks unsheltered in our city. I'm wondering if we have any sense what that might look like today, and if you have any, and obviously not a crystal ball, but any idea what that might look like as we see sort of the
but I can jump in and have Sandra answer that. I guess the one thing I'd say is we really need to always remember that the homeless count is a drastic undercount. You know, as I've done the count in the past, you know, there's for every one person that I do count, there's one or two that say they don't want to be counted. So I think we need to recognize that the problem is obviously the scale is larger than just the count. But maybe I'll ask Sandra to jump in to specifically answer your question.
Thank you. Yeah, very briefly for me, and then I'll ask Celine for more specifics. We do know that a number of measures undertaken by a variety of community partners and organizations have impacted street homelessness numbers during COVID. For example, no guest policies, some shelter thinning, as well as some people electing to sleep outside rather than in a shelter for their own sense of safety. Celine, do you have any kind of sense of numbers or anything in terms of housekeeping?
Hi, everybody. Celine Mobless. No, we don't, Sandra. We don't have an active point in time. Is really that point in time we use to gauge those trends, but just acknowledging that it is an undercount. We don't have any updated numbers per se.
Okay, I understand we have somebody from Park Board on as well. Perhaps they have a sense of how many folks are seeking shelter in parks throughout the city.
Yeah, I can jump in. We do have Amit on the line from the Park Board. So maybe I'll ask him to come off of mute. Amit Ganda is with the Park Board. Amit, do you want to jump in?
Yes, Amit Ganda here. We don't have, say, a number for how many people, but I can give you a rough estimate of, say, tents and structures. Strathcona, as our last count, was 378 at Strathcona, and a rough estimate of how many shelters we have throughout our park system would be between 75 to 100 in addition to the ones we have in Strathcona.
Thanks. Apologies for the dog barking in the background. And appreciate that. One last question. I guess this is more for the city manager. Can you clarify what is the obligation and the role of BC Housing in supporting our unsheltered individuals in our city and otherwise? Is it like their legal obligation?
Thanks. You know, in terms of legal obligation, that's a good question. We do have someone from law on the phone, on the line. I don't know, Jeff, if you have anything you want to say about it. But what I guess I would say is that it is their jurisdiction to support homeless residents, and they have the financial resources to do that. Sometimes not enough, but generally speaking, they are our primary partners in tackling these issues, and it is their mandate to do so. In terms of the legal components of that, Jeff, is there anything you wanted to add to that, or
No, Sadhu, thanks. That sums it up.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff. I hope that answers your question, Pete.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yep.
All good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fry. Moving on with Councillor Hardwick. Go ahead, Councillor Hardwick, for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. A question to staff regarding the homeless count most recently, as we consider a complex problem and therefore complex solutions. Do we have a sense of the composition demographically of the folks living in the park by age, by sex? Do we know if these are long-term local residents that may have been evicted? Are they folks with mental health and addiction issues? Are there people that are coming to Vancouver recently? I'm trying to get an understanding if there was some triage around determining who goes where and in this process, how much knowledge we have about the composition from the homeless count.
Councillor Sandra Singh here. normally in the past with encampments, staff would have had an opportunity to do a bit of a census and gather some information from people in the camp to be able to answer those very questions. To date with Strathcona, we haven't been able to do that because of the situation with the camp leadership. However, our understanding is that BC Housing, their contractor PHS, is undertaking that work this week, and so we're hoping for that very data next week or very, very soon.
Will you be able to share that with council?
Yes, we should be able to.
Great. I think the more informed we are, not just in sheer numbers, but in the actual composition of the affected people would be very useful for us and for staff, I'm sure. Thank you.
If I can jump in, Councillor Hardwick, the question around the homeless count and the demographics of people that are homeless in Vancouver, we do have that information, and we will be reporting out on that level of detail for the homeless population that we saw in the homeless count, and that'll be coming to council in October. So we will be able to get into that level of details that relates to the broader homeless population.
So just to continue on that line, Mr. City Manager, this will be concurrent then with staff bringing back their findings, presuming that this motion is approved and moves forward.
I think within a week of each other. But hearing that's something you're looking for, we will try to bring that forward as a part of it to the best of our ability.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Hardwick. Councillor Bly, go ahead for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And my question is actually directed also to the Park Board staff. Thank you for being here today. I just wanted to follow up on Councillor Kirby-Young's questions regarding the bylaw enactment anticipated for Monday's meeting and how that relates to encampments specifically. That's question one, and then I may have a follow-up.
Great. Yeah, maybe I'll ask Amit to jump in again. Amit Ganda from the Park Board.
Thank you, Amit here. There's really not much I can say. I mean, aside from the meeting that's coming up, it'll come from the board direction on what that looks like. So for me to really say one way or the other, it's a difficult situation for me. I have to wait for what the board comes back with on Monday.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, because until it's enacted with a vote of majority, of course, that would seem reasonable. But I have heard publicly that the bylaw as drafted, which was voted on before the August recess that has yet to be enacted, does sort of preclude encampments from, like larger encampments from that bylaw, and that bylaw is set to address perhaps one-off tenting in parks that those folks would have to move on in the morning. So maybe you could just, that's my understanding. You're free to not answer, of course, but I'm just looking for that clarification versus speaking affirmatively, knowing that it hasn't been enacted yet.
That is in the bylaw, but I think speaking to perhaps if this motion goes through today or not, I think there's a big tie and a connection to where this leads. And I think it all depends on where this lands, and the Parks Board's decision moving forward will align better with this. I mean, if the goal is to find people with better shelter and more support and for the good for the whole, I don't see much difference in that. As far as the enforcement for the moving people out, again, I would have to defer back to the board on what their decisions on that are. I'm not even aware of where the motions will land on Monday either.
Right, of course. No, and I wouldn't expect you to. Okay, well, that's helpful. I think that the final comments there were my follow-up question in terms of addressing some of the concerns of historical concerns of Park Board to move people along in large encampments if they don't necessarily have anywhere to go. So I guess I'll leave it there. I'm not sure. Madam Chair, may I ask a point of information or perhaps a point of order?
Well, a point of information is what you are doing in effect, but if it's a point of order, go ahead. What's your point?
Is that will there be questions to staff later in the proceeding?
I had not intended on a round of questions as we are having now. This is a very special opportunity. However, you always have the opportunity, if you have the floor, to ask a point of information, and that point of information can be directed through me to staff for an answer.
Thanks for the clarification. That's all my questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And that is Yes, go ahead, Councillor DiGenova, with your point of privilege.
Thanks so much. I'm just reloading my my Creston queue here. I was hoping I could be added to the queue for questions.
You may, and you have been added, and you are now up for up to 5 minutes.
Thanks so much. My first question was just, and I'll direct it to through you, Chair Card, the city manager, and we'll see who he might suggest should answer. But I'm curious about the question of encampments and how this could possibly hurt trying to build permanent housing moving forward, if there's any concerns that staff have about that, and about permanent housing like modular housing being something that might not see as much funding come forward, including some of the projects that currently are in flux.
Yes.
I think I can take a crack at that. So do you mean a sanctioned encampment and how that might take financial resources away from building permanent housing? Is that the question?
Well, I'm assuming that we wouldn't be funding it ourselves. So if we were asking for funding from our partners, the same partners that usually fund the modular housing and the permanent housing units, yes, that's what I'm asking.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess what I'd say, generally speaking, like staff really would support the ending of the Strathcona encampment. Like it's taking away the park space, and it's really creating very, very considerable negative impacts on the community. And it would be our preference, as we've already stated, to find indoor permanent housing for people. And given that there's a lot of it under construction, but higher demand than is available, we would support looking for alternatives, be they in temporary modular, permanent modular, which we've got, lots of projects moving forward. Or
Mr. City Manager, my question was just, do you think it would jeopardize the funding that we would be asking for moving forward with our partners from BC Housing and federal funding, from your level to sort of the CEO of BC Housing? You'd mentioned that you'd spoken with them. There's only so much money. Would this in part be coming from funding that would otherwise be used for modular?
Yeah, my sense is that I don't think that this direction would be, obviously there's a limited amount of money. So the province needs to determine where they want to put it, obviously, and we would be a partner in advocating for certain things. But I'd say I don't envision that this would jeopardize money for permanent housing.
Okay, thanks so much. And then I have a question just for you, Mr. Johnston, but also probably a question that related to public safety. So I'll let you address that how you would like, or if you think that should go on to VPD or also Vancouver Fire and Rescue, because I think it's also public health and sort of response in encampments like Strathcona. Are there huge public safety concerns? We've seen barbed wire. We've seen, a number of things, mostly on social media is how I'm alerted to them. But also just wondering if even if we did move forward with something else, is there anything right now that gives us confidence that the park board would move forward with an injunction if another encampment were to just set up in a park? If the structure of this new type of relief center was not perhaps favored by certain residents, and they still decided to have a Strathcona camp like encampment, would that be something that you'd be concerned about? So right. Public safety, right. And also how can we avoid those other encampments anyways?
Right.
Or can we? Thanks.
Yes, right. Good points. Good questions. Maybe I'll ask Deputy Chow from the VPD to speak to the safety perspectives from a policing side of things, and then I've also Kieran Moron is on from fire. Maybe each of them could speak to that issue. Howard?
Sure, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, perfect. So that is a concern for us, and as encampments, typically, our calls for service increase dramatically in the encampment itself, as well as the neighborhood. We've seen about a 50% increase in weapons calls around Strathcona, about 68% increase in break and enters, threatening street disorder. So that issue is still a problem in and around this particular encampment. But, you know, I mean, we're prepared to work with city staff on this to mitigate all the concerns that we have, you know, if it was to be relocated. In terms of decamping, I mean, obviously that's going to be a decision by parks and city staff and or council in terms of direction there, and we can assist in that front. But these are concerns that we are talking to residents all the time and getting the feedback about their sense of fear and security and street disorder that they're seeing on a fairly consistent basis. And I'll flip it over back to you, Sadhu.
And I think we are out of time, so hopefully that question got answered.
Kind of, but thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Chair Carr.
Okay, thank you.
Would now be the time to move for a second round of questions?
No, I indicated at the beginning that this is a very extraordinary circumstance to have a round of questions, and I have conferred in advance with staff, and the desire is to keep it at this one round at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right. Councillor Delminato, I see that you are on the list now. Go ahead.
Hi, Madam Chair. It's on a point of privilege. It's just a flag that we've had a request by members of the public and the media if we can display councillors' names on the screen when we're speaking, just because there's some difficulty with the sound. And so just raising that here, so maybe that could be addressed throughout the meeting.
Madam City Clerk, is that a possibility to have that addressed?
Chair Carr, no, that's not possible. What I can suggest is when it is the councillor's time to speak, when you advance the floor to that councillor, if you could announce the name of the councillor speaking, that would be helpful.
And maybe I could just speak to spend a moment here. As you know, we had some problems with our vendor that was doing our live stream earlier in the year, which was not great timing. So we are looking to upgrade our systems, and in the future we may have the ability to do more of that type of form of communication and be better generally online. So we're kind of cobbling it together with the resources we have. If you are listening and you're having a hard time hearing, we are also streaming on YouTube as well. And if you go to our Twitter account, you'll see the links to other ways to engage if you're having a hard time hearing the audio. We've got multiple channels streaming.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Manager. And Councillor, as I normally do, I will always announce the name of the councillor who is asking a question of a speaker, so people who are listening in can be alerted by my introduction to say whatever the councillor's name is, go ahead with your questions to the speaker. So I'll continue to do that. Okay, we are finished with questions at this point. Thank you very much, councillors, and thank you very much, Mr. Johnson, and to all the staff who have joined this call and been willing to answer the questions. I know that all the council is very appreciative of that. Just before we begin with the speakers list, which is the point we're at, I just want to make it clear to everyone that the speakers will be providing comments to council by phone. The moderator will assist in patching the speakers through. We do have a good number of people who are also attending City Hall to speak in person in the council chambers. I think 19 of the 30 people who are on our speakers list. Council and members of the public and speakers, there will be some momentary silence after a speaker who has been in person has left the chamber. That will be to allow our staff to be able to clean the podium thoroughly, as is an important requirement under the COVID-19 rules that we are operating under. And so just be patient. We will then get to the next speaker once the podium has been thoroughly cleaned. Speakers, I really understand that this is a very significant motion to all of you. That's why you are here to speak, either online or in person. It does generate, of course, a very important and tough conversation amongst all of us, including those at council. I ask that you focus your comments on the content of the motion and make it clear to council whether you support or don't support the motion, that would be very helpful to us. And ask that you speak respectfully at all times as required by our procedure bylaws. So we will go ahead with the first speaker, who is Devin Quipper. And that speaker is by phone. Madam Clerk, if you could just alert me to whether they are ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Quipper, go ahead. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? You have up to 5 minutes. We can hear you clearly.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor and Council, for giving me the chance to speak on this issue. I've been a citizen and taxpayer of Vancouver for the past 19 years. I'm not in support of the city utilizing any further tax dollars or city resources in respect to the options that are up for consideration. It really concerns me, to be honest, that there's no discussion, and I know Mr. Mayor did make a mention that he didn't care about the length of time that people were living in the city to receive that support, but we know that Vancouver is very unique in terms of the weather that we experience throughout the colder months of the year versus west parts of Canada. This is really a provincial and federal issue. I know, reading some recent articles in 2019, the homeless count of the people who answered, 91% of those homeless reported that they were not from Vancouver. In 2017, that number was 90%. 2016, it was 83%. 2015, it was 80%. So it's been going up consistently since 2015. My concern is that to burden City of Vancouver taxpayers with funding this that is for citizens that aren't even really from our city, that have come here for a variety of reasons. And I am very happy that we live in a very compassionate city, but I think there's a lot of misplaced compassion and people stepping above and beyond the bounds of what they should be doing in terms of taxpayer dollars. We are here to help people that are from Vancouver, and, we want to do that, but there's a limit. There's so many people. There's single moms that are working hard and struggling in the middle of COVID. There's a lot of issues that this city needs to address that are not being addressed. And the focus on spending more dollars here, you build it and they'll come. And it sounds like it's heartless, but it's not. I'm saying this is something the provincial and federal government need to address because it is a much bigger problem than the city of Vancouver. And I think by us taking the lead on this and it getting out, we've just seen these numbers continue to increase. We're going to be the ones that bear the fruit of what's happening here. And I'm really concerned about that because I walk the streets regularly and I've seen the increases of, mentally ill, addicted. There's a fear when you walk down the street in Vancouver right now, which I think is really unfortunate. And I spoke to a friend who lives in Port Coquitlam yesterday, and he was saying him and his wife will not come downtown anymore because they don't feel safe. And I think that's a tragedy. And this is a complex situation. There's no doubt about it. And something needs to be done, but it's not a City of Vancouver issue. It's a provincial and federal issue. And I think that what needs to be addressed here is what the city will do to push that with the provincial and federal governments to do something about it and to limit the influx of what's happening and what's burdening this city. It's getting out of control. People are getting frustrated. You see what's happening in the areas like Yaletown. You see it happening in Strathcona. It's going to happen elsewhere wherever things start to be put up. And it's just not healthy for the people involved. It's not healthy for the citizens of Vancouver. And things need to change. And what's on the table today is not the solution. More taxpayer dollars. The mayor earlier in this year, when COVID first started, said that the city of Vancouver was at risk of going bankrupt, which was a little irresponsible, to be honest, and I think put a lot of people even into more fear. But this is something that we really need to, spend some time thinking about and push it on the provincial and federal government, not the city of Vancouver and its taxpayers. Thank you.
And thank you very much. And you do have questions, so if you could just stay on the line, that's great. And Councillor Swanson, you have up to, I think it's 3. Madam Clerk, is it 3 minutes on motions?
Chair Carr, that is correct. 3 minutes to speakers.
Thank you. So you have 3 minutes. Councillor Swanson, go ahead.
Yeah. I just looked at the most recent report on the homeless count, and over 70% of the people that were counted had lived in Vancouver for over a year. So I don't know where you're getting your stats. But they're certainly not the ones that we're getting. Do you have a response to that?
Yeah, you can respond.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've been reading it in a couple of like one that I'm looking at here is in the Daily Hive, based on the 2019 homeless count, and based on those who responded.
So I would just suggest that you look at the actual report. Just Google 2020 Vancouver homeless count and it'll come up.
My question is, though, that's for within the past year, but outside of that, did they originate from Vancouver?
Well, it didn't ask that question, but I know I didn't originate from Vancouver, and a lot of people didn't originate from Vancouver.
Of course, like I said, a lot of people, as we know, because basically the environment conditions here in the winter, this is a place that a lot of people migrate to. We know that in Alberta, they were actually paying one-way bus tickets for people to come here. And I think this is the bigger issue that I feel council should be addressing, because you do have a responsibility to, be stewards of the tax dollars that you collect. And if we're spending city tax dollars on groups of people that should be a federal or provincial responsibility, that's up to you as council to do your part to protect our tax dollars as well. I believe something needs to be done. Everybody does. This is a very compassionate city, but there's a lot of misplaced compassion happening right now, and this falls at the feet of the provincial and federal governments.
Well, I agree that it falls at the feet of the feds, but I think somebody needs to do something.
And that's what I think we need, the council needs to be addressing right now, not talking about let's explore things for the city to do. We should be saying, what kind of plan of action can we do to put further pressure on the provincial and federal governments? We talked about, or someone earlier spoke about the legal side of it with the BC Housing. We have to be exploring those options and say, how can we relieve the burden that City of Vancouver taxpayers, because it's not just the cost of putting them up. We know that the fire response, the VPD, there's the ambulances that go by my house. I live near Science World. I'm very close to the epicenter of a lot of these issues. There's so much burden that the City of Vancouver taxpayers are footing, and now we're talking about spending more. We have to change the narrative here and say this is a provincial and federal problem. We're footing the bill for people that are coming here from across the country, and yes, some of them have been here for quite some time.
Okay, and that's it for your time, Councillor Swanson, but you have more questions. Councillor DiGenova, you are next with your questions to the Speaker.
Thanks so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for your presentation and making the time to be here today virtually. Just wondered, I mean, I'm looking at some of the numbers and appreciate that, Council has tried to do our best. I'm not saying that, in framing this question that the money is not well spent, but the question is whether or not we should be spending the money. So the City of Vancouver already in 2016 implemented a 0.5% tax increase, which now would be more than that due to inflation. So it sits in our budget now. Is that the type of expense, like for instance, any other municipality, it's the Ministry of Health provincially that's paying for that. And we here in Vancouver are paying that extra funding. That being said, it is going to, help with efforts for the overdose crisis. But are those the types of costs that you're talking about being downloaded to the taxpayer, that the money's well spent, but, should we be the ones funding this, or is that already a tax that Vancouverites are paying twice? I'm just trying to hear your concerns.
I think that's somewhat true. I know that in speaking with a lot of my neighbors and I'm quite active in the community, I know that is a concern, as people want to know where the dollars that have been sort of already, taxed, essentially, where are those dollars going? But I think the one thing I know is that this city is very compassionate, and it does care about the residents that live here, even those that are new residents. But at the same time, we don't think, me and a lot of other taxpayers think that it's fair that we take on that burden. I think the city should do its part, but I know in some northern communities where they have some of their own tent encampments, they've chased some of those folks out, and I think some of them end up coming down here as well. And, I think provincially, if everybody put some money into this is something that we need to address at such a bigger level than just City of Vancouver. And I think residents here are willing to do their part and put a fair share in, but I think we're taking on too much of that.
I only have a few seconds left, so can I ask you, do you think a regional approach is the best approach to this?
That's exactly what I think. I think that, even just on a Metro Vancouver level, yes.
Great. Thank you, Councillor DiGenova. But you do have more questions, and go ahead, Mayor Stewart, with up to 3 minutes. Mayor Stewart, you may be muted.
Yep. Sorry. Thanks very much. Thanks for the caller for participating today. So if the federal and provincial governments don't do anything, and they don't put any more money into this issue that we're facing, and you say that the city shouldn't do anything either?
Well, I think the city has to do something because right now we're seeing an impact on the residents who live here and who are taxpayers. I mean, I've had my car window broken. Others have had their car windows broken. I think the VPD was mentioning the increase in crime around Strathcona since the encampment developed there. There are issues that need to be addressed. Now, should we?
Okay, so what are do you have an option for us?
I think just like we were just speaking about, I think this is something that should start maybe on a Metro Vancouver level, and then really go after and force the provincial and federal government to address this issue on a more wholeheartedly approach than what has been happened to this point.
But if they don't do it, which they haven't done, there's been very little money, for example, from the federal level at all, nothing for emergency housing. If the federal and provincial governments and the Metro government doesn't, and it's up to us, what do you suggest we do?
Mr. Mayor, there's a lot of charity groups in this city, and I would love it if you would start a new one, and those that want to actually support it can do so. And I know that there will be a lot of Vancouverites that will do that. But utilizing taxpayer
How much would you put in?
How much would I put in? Depends upon
Sure.
where those dollars are going to go. It's going to depend
Wherever
where
you'd
those
like it to
dollars
go.
will go. Where would I like it to go? To reduce crime, I would like to see some actual programs put in place to let these people have a chance to rehabilitate. The mental illness is the biggest problem of all, and nobody ever addresses that on a level that it needs to be addressed. I think mental health is probably the biggest one, and addiction. Those are two things. We call it homeless all the time. We put this broad paintbrush on it as homelessness or unsheltered. We need to call it for what it is, and it's not fair to those that are just generally homeless, that don't have an addiction or don't have a mental illness. We can't paint them with a broad brush. We need to actually deal with what it is. Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. There are more people, more councillors questioning you, so just again, stay on the line. Councillor Kirby-Young, you are next for up to 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you again for being here. I appreciate it, and I agree with you that mental health and addictions treatment is a significant missing piece now. My question is that if this motion is to pass, it asks staff to do a bunch of research and homework and come back to council essentially with options articulating the various qualities of each and quantifying the cost of those various options. If, as Mayor Stewart said, the other levels of government do not step up and deliver on their mandate in this area, it is a very likely discussion at council that we will be asked to discuss what we would not do at the city in order to support this. And that could be things like we're already facing shortfalls, and I'm anticipating things like, sort of core services such as keeping community centers, libraries open, street sanitation, et cetera. So is that your position that you would not favor prioritizing investment in this over the city's other deliverables?
That's somewhat correct, yes. Like I said, I do believe that this city is compassionate and is willing to pay a fair share towards it. But I think over the years, we've, had this pipe dream of, being ending homelessness, which is, a very difficult thing to take on for one city. And I think what we've inevitably done is we've, made ourselves more of a destination for, a lot of people who have a lot of problems. And if we do that and we invest in it to a certain level, it's like they say, if you build it, they will come. That's, I think, the threshold that we have to be looking at here is, are we doing the right amount, or are we doing too much? We all would love to live in a utopian society where everybody has, you know, a home and has a perfect life. That's obviously never going to happen. And right now, there's a lot of people facing a lot of problems. I think what we need to do is realize. Sorry?
Sorry. I have a limited amount of time, so I'm not meaning to cut you off, but I want to ask you one follow-up question if I can.
Of course, yes.
And that is, sorry, that is really around, sorry, go ahead and finish your point for a second.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that I think that that's where we have to find the, you know, the threshold, that we don't want to go past too far, because there is too many people coming here because of the services that we're doing, and, you know, we're burdening taxpayers farther than we need to.
Okay, and one other question. Given, I'm just going to jump in with this question, I'll run out of time. Just given that it is COVID, it came back and it was a time-bound, time-limited, say for 6 months, specifically for COVID, and it was $1 to $2 million that could come from a dedicated funding source like the empty homes tax that is levied and, you know, legislatively has to provide for housing. Would you support that?
Not necessarily. I think that that's also going down a slippery slope, because how can you take something away once you've provided it? I think that, you know, I think we have to have a bit more of a wholesome approach for Metro Vancouver, at least as a starting point. I think that that's the most important thing that we need to address here is, you know, if we don't have props. Can I just say one thing? Yeah. Can I finish my answer? I think what we should be talking about is some strategies of how we can mitigate the influx of people that are coming here, and the ones that are here, what can we do, have the provincial and federal government do for their part of what needs to be done?
Okay, thank you. And you still do have more questions. And councillors, I will just remind you to start your questions to give the speaker enough time to answer within your 3 minutes. Councillor Bly, you are up next. Go ahead for up to 3 minutes.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thank you to the speaker for coming in to speak or for calling in. I just am curious if you've had a chance to review with a subsequent motion that myself and council would put forward next council meeting, just the nature of how our process works. It was submitted before we knew about this meeting. I just wonder if you have had a chance to look at it.
No, I haven't.
My request is, would you mind doing so and writing in your comments, because you speak to a lot of things that are being addressed in that motion. And one of those is sort of a triage, emergency room type approach that does look at the individual needs of people that are essentially in Strathcona Park at this time. But we've had 3 years of significant encampments in the city, and Metro Vancouver hasn't seemed to play any role in that. And there are even people who are sitting on council right now that have been directors there, certainly this term and multiple terms. I'm just curious if, you know, I'm not sure if, well, I guess that's sort of my point, is just, why do you think they haven't stepped up to this point so far in helping address these issues? Because nobody would argue with you as to whether or not this is regional. This is absolutely regional, but they're not an elected group. And I'm not sure if there's an understanding as to what their role truly is and what historically the role they've played in addressing encampments.
Well, I think a lot of people don't step up because it's a political, you know, hot potato. I think, you know, no one wants to talk about tough love, but there is a little bit of tough love that needs to happen as well. I think we're dealing with people that have limited capacity as adults, and sometimes you need to deal with them differently. And I think sometimes it may not always be seen as politically correct in terms of how people approach the situation. But if it's for the good of the people at the end of the day, maybe they don't realize it in the beginning, but if we're if the mission and the true mission is to help people, it's when people live in misery, and they have a problem, it's very hard to get out of that. And if we make them too comfortable living in misery, there's no incentive to make a change. And that's the problem I think we're doing, is we're making people living in misery too comfortable, and they're not going to change. And that's the problem I think we need to have strategies to go against.
Yeah, it would be really helpful to hear your thoughts on that future motion. So if you wouldn't mind taking a look at motion number 7 on the agenda for next week and writing in and letting us know your thoughts, it'd be great.
I will, for sure.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you still have more questions. So thank you, Councillor Bly. Councillor Fry, you're up for another 3 minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I'll keep this quite quick. I just really wanted to correct the record. I know you mentioned some assumptions based on a Daily Hive article. I'm looking at the City of Vancouver homeless count stats for 2019, and I'm wondering if it would surprise you to learn that 81% of that homeless count were living in Vancouver when they became homeless. Does that change some of your assumptions or opinions?
Yeah, that would surprise me. I would probably question that number. I mean, I don't know if I completely believe in the Daily Hive number as well, but in terms of the folks that live down there, and I've driven by that area quite a bit, and I've actually talked to a few of the individuals, I would challenge that 81% number as well.
Okay,
I think it's undeniable that a lot of people do come to Vancouver because of the weather, and we've seen the news, over the years where, be it Manitoba or Alberta, we're trying to encourage people to come out here. I think it's undeniable there's a lot of folks here that are not from Vancouver. 81%, if that was the actual number, would be quite shocking to me. But as we know, people responding to those may not always give the proper answer as well.
Sure, that could be, but that's the official Vancouver 2019 homeless count final report. You can Google it online. And I just wanted to really correct the record that is our official number. And I guess I also want to just sort of, I do appreciate that, the narrative that we do need to get senior government stepping up to the plate and the region. And we're waiting, and we're waiting, and we're waiting. In the absence of them showing up at the plate, though, do you agree that the status quo is just not working and we need to do something differently because it's not getting any better?
I completely agree. I think the status quo is exactly the problem that we have right now, and I think the city has made things, worse, not better, over the last number of years. Being a resident and being quite active in going out in the community, I've seen what's happened out there, and it's not positive. I know people who have left downtown because they don't feel comfortable or safe down here. And there's a lot of issues that I think the city needs to address, and some of them are very difficult to talk about. And, it's just like I look at it this way, even for the drug addicts that, do use needles, you can still be having that problem, but what's right and wrong in terms of you shouldn't leave a needle in a playground.
I don't disagree with you about playgrounds should be off limits for that kind of thing. I certainly agree with you there, and I think a lot of people who use drugs would agree with you as well, in fact.
And I think that's something the city should be talking about as well, is how we can communicate with that group and have them police themselves a little bit. I know there are good people in there that want to see changes, and they know that some of the other folks in their group are making things worse for them, and maybe we need to engage them more and get them on board of looking at this differently.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for your comments.
Great, thank you. And that is your time. Councillor Fry, so perfectly timed. And that is the end of speakers for you, Mr. Cooper. Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to answer all those questions. Great.
Thank you.
And just before I turn, thank you. Just before I turn to the next speaker, councillors, there are a few of you that may not be always on mute, so we're hearing some background noise. So just make sure when you're not speaking that you do go on mute, and then when obviously you're speaking that you do promptly go off mute. And also just to speakers, just want to remind all of you as speakers that you will, or you may not get questions from councillors, but you are actually under no obligation to answer those questions if you do not wish to. Now moving to our next speaker, who is in person, Karen Ward.
Chair Carr, we don't have the next speaker here.
Okay. Moving to our third speaker, Emma Lale.
Yes.
Emma Lale on the phone? Yes, is that yes, Ms. Lale? Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. We can hear you clearly. Go ahead for up to 5 minutes.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for letting me speak today. I'm just a concerned resident as well. I'm a mom of 10-year-old kids, and I was just wanted to give my output on this. I live in Yaletown, and my kids go to the Elsie Roy Elementary School. At the point where the Roundhouse Community Center became a shelter, we had lots of issues going on in the school system. So I just wanted to be considered about the third option that the mayor gave, in the sense of own buildings of the city. Which buildings would he refer to? And sorry, I'm a little bit upset maybe and not really clear, but I just wanted to say that community centers being considered as a sheltered would be very, very destructive for the livelihood of the children that go there. So I was wondering, when considering all these options, my first question would be, when you're sheltering people, do you have any output about their criminal background, if they're dealing with mental illness, if they're dealing with addiction? Is there any qualification in order for those people to get housed like we would normally do? When I was applying for housing, I had to qualify in order to be housed. And the same question will be for option 2, and same question will be for option 3. How do we know what kind of group of people are we talking about housing? Because I really feel that housing is a multi-layered issue, and I don't think the criminal behavior that's going on around the city should be condoned in any ways and be called upon compassion from the residents.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments. And you do have questions from Councillor Dominato. Councillor Dominato, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Emma, for calling in and reflecting some of your considerations. Appreciate, hearing from parents. I'm also a parent and have young children. Just for clarity, would something, we're obviously going to be deliberating on a number of the clauses in this motion today, but would you appreciate some consideration for exclusion of community centers in terms of, if we were to, one of the options is to renovate existing city buildings, and we actually have quite a few city-owned buildings and properties throughout the city, and some of them are industrial, some are used for arts and culture, but would you think that's appropriate, is to exclude community centers from that?
I absolutely do think, because of many reasons. First of all, the community centers cater to also very vulnerable population, which is mostly children and seniors, and they're most of the time adjoined to the school zones. Like, honestly, Roundhouse is attached to El Ciroy, and many parents rely to Roundhouse Community Center for before and after school care, and that will put all these people that live in the area in a very unpleasant situation of not having childcare for their children, and they still have to go to work on top of all the stress that we have with COVID. So I definitely don't think that's a good solution. The community centers, it's pretty much the same situation with Cole Harbor, and it's the same situation with West End, that it's adjoined to the Lord Robert schools. And yes, and let alone taking away the programs in the community center from the children and from the seniors who really, really, really need them, especially at this time. Yeah.
Thanks. But I think that's actually a good reminder about the fact that we actually have many preschools, daycares, after-school care programming, and school programming connected to most of our community centers in some way, shape, or form. We're also trying to reopen our community centers at this time as part of all of our restart and reopening for the fall. So thank you for that reminder. Thanks for your time today.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dominato. You do have more questions. Councillor Kirby-Young, go ahead. You may be on mute.
Sorry, having trouble with the mute button. Thank you, Emma, for being here, and I appreciate your compassion, particularly for our seniors and for all of the folks that are really struggling in the city. I just have a really simple question for you. As you mentioned, you're a mom with young kids. Do you feel safe in the city, in your neighborhood now?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Actually, I live adjoined to the Helmkamp Park, and I'm a resident who 3 times was in a position to call on police for overdose people behind my building. My building is adjoined, like I said, to the Helmkamp Park, and we cannot let our kids play in our backyard. Our backyard was, if you can see the report from the CD 311 line, you're gonna see how many reports only from our building We're on the discarded dirty needles in our backyards, people coming in on our patios, and just being really scary situation. And we have to be locked all the time and not let our kids be, just go anywhere around these areas. Absolutely not.
What do you do?
So the
what
safety,
do you do?
for me, honestly, in the whole this situation, I'm only concerned about the safety, and I totally feel for the homeless people, and I really have strong compassion, but I have no compassion for this destructive behavior, like for vandalism,
Can I ask, with that response and that answer, do you do things differently now, or what do you do differently in your daily routine because of that lack of comfort?
Well, if nothing changed, we will definitely be forced to move. That's our bottom line. We are just hoping that we're going to see the changes in the city because we love Vancouver. We were very happy. Our family was really happy raising our children here, and it's a fantastic community. And everybody knows everybody. We're just very tight-knit community, and we will be very sad to leave that, but I definitely see it as a bottom line if nothing changes in that sense.
You would actually consider seriously leaving the city?
Sorry?
I said you would seriously consider leaving the city.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. And many people already are. And yes, absolutely. And plus, I'm a renter, so I'm not a rich person who, has so much backlash for reporting and voicing those concerns. So for me as a renter, honestly, not being able to afford housing for my family, and on top of it, having to deal with all this and being scared for the well-being of my children is like absolute no. And yes, we will be. That's our bottom line. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks, Councillor. And you do still have more questions. Mayor Stewart, go ahead for up to 3 minutes.
Great. Thank you very much for phoning in today. And again, this discussion is options that we're asking to look at, and your feedback is exactly what's important to us to know as we're exploring these very difficult options is to what the public think about them as well. So thank you for doing that. I was wondering what you think we should do about the situation. Do you have another option that we should ask staff to explore?
I definitely think that this is not a City of Vancouver issue. I would agree with the previous speaker. I definitely think that the city should serve as an advocate to upper levels of government to deal with this. And everyone needs to take a slack on this situation. Like, what about the Metro Vancouver? The Metro Vancouver will be absolutely surprised that people from the City of Vancouver will start coming there and moving there to other, suburbs and cities. So I definitely believe that City of Vancouver, the councillors and the mayor and the staff should be working on strong advocacy towards spreading this issue further and to not take the slack for all the municipalities, basically. Yes, until more permanent solutions are available.
And I know it's a difficult, discussion, but we have been, all councillors have been very strong advocates at federal, provincial, and at metro level, and the help just isn't coming. So we're in this situation where we may have to act on our own. We may not have to, but I guess that situation that we're in, and with those conditions in mind, can you think of something that you would think we should do at the city level?
Well, maybe creating more partnership with mental health and addiction societies. I'm not sure. I mean,
it's tough, isn't it? Yeah.
Many of those people have to be hospitalized. Like, I would think the Riverview Hospital was closed. Like, even if it has only 150 beds to deal with the most difficult cases, that would be one of the options. And just going from somewhere, like from small things, moving towards a housing for the people who really need it. But I think first of all, housing, like I said, it's a multi-layered issue. And I really think that the most vulnerable people needs to be addressed first through medical help. That would be my thinking. Or, I don't know, just being in a hospital setting where they will really get help and something that will put them on their feet to become more functional individuals and contributing to the society. Definitely, I would think about that.
Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. And those are your questions. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us on this.
Thank you for having me.
Yep, you're welcome. And we are now moving on to speaker 4, Liliana Anjic.
Chair Carr, we're just checking to see if the speaker is online.
Thank you.
Hello, sorry, I was just Liliana here.
Yes, thank you. We can hear you clearly. Go ahead for up to 5 minutes.
Okay, so I've been a resident of City of Vancouver for now going on to 26 years. I've been in the same neighborhood, which is neighborhood of Yaletown, and I have to tell you that this neighborhood certainly changed, not for better, but for worse. I also understand that the homelessness is in crisis and that it's a test of civilized society, and we are currently failing on that front. My only concern, and the reason I am actually joining here, is that this should not be only responsibility. I appreciate the leadership that City of Vancouver is taking, but this is not only City of Vancouver or taxpayers of City of Vancouver responsibility, because it should be provincial and it should be federal. It's really hard to, for me, to see that BC received 0.5% of federal funds for affordable housing between February 2018 and February 2020, which is only $7.3 million for 2 projects out of budget, which was $1.46 billion. The rest of it went to Ontario. So my question to the council, and I'm all for it, supporting, homeless, understanding the root cause of homeless, not just, bundling people, because some people are homeless just, we see what's happening over 6 months period of time. So we need to be compassionate, but we need to first through ministries, and understand the prevention of it, and then work through province as well as the federal and other municipalities to address this issue. I personally do not feel comfortable, having taxpayers, Vancouver taxpayers handling this solely. I understand it's a huge issue. It's a huge burden of this city. And I'm going to tell you that I do not feel safe around the neighborhood that I call my home for so many years. I'm home the first, sunset. I don't even go anywhere around. I raise my kid who doesn't live in this neighborhood, but it's still. So my question is what are we doing collectively? Because if we only, put all the people that we call homelessness without really understanding the root cause into indoors, we're not solving the problem. I think this is really not the city problem. This is the whole. Are we looking any countries in Europe how they solve the issue? Because with the housing coming the services, and I'll use the previous speaker used the roundhouse. We created the roundhouse as a temporary place for people to shelter. 50% of the time, people will not maintain, staying inside. So they were creating a lot of challenges and problems. I have a sister that lives, half a block down the street and has a townhouse. She called me in the middle of the night because somebody was jumping over her yard, and she was the only one with the two boys. We called the police, and calls after, one after another. So I think we need to look at it. We need to look at it. This is not just finding a temporary solution with the COVID situation is one thing. And I think for the three proposed options, I think there needs to be a bigger goal in place. Where are we going to? Because we're just moving problems from one part of the town to another part of the town. And that needs to go, hand in hand with a lot of support services and use perhaps staircase approach, which is, some individuals that are just lost home because they lost jobs and they're homeless. They're going to have certain areas of town when you can house them. The certain level is the individuals that have, mental health issues. So we're going to address that in a different way. And, so on and so forth, because a lot of these individuals do not want to be part of any, housing. So we're just giving them the place when we're not solving their initial problem. And what's happening, I was looking at the statistics, the homelessness in BC, and it's going to go even higher with the cold weather coming, back east and people moving to West Coast. So we're asking our, staff members, we're asking our family to stay at home, we're asking small businesses to close businesses to stay inside. To prevent the spreading virus and creating more problem. On the other side, yes. We have people traveling from...
Excuse me, Ms. Anjay, you have run out of time. I've given you a few more seconds, but you have taken your 5 minutes. There are no questions to you from councillors, but we very much appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Speaker number 5 is Fiona York. Fiona York on the line. Oh, she is supposed to be in person. Madam Clerk, is she in chambers?
Chair Card, no. Fiona York is not here.
Okay, thank you. Speaker number 6, Veronica Butler.
Chair Card, Veronica Butler is not here.
Okay, speaker number 7, Chrissy Brett.
And Chrissy Brett is also not here.
Okay, speaker number 8, Cherry White.
This speaker is just entering the chamber. We're just getting her set up.
Oh, 1 second, Chris, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Shuri White, and I live in a large character community home in the downtown east side at 522 East Cordova, across from Oppenheimer Park. For the past 8 years, sharing a community home with another family and 3 other singles. And I've been a resident of the downtown east side for the past 17 years. We often share our dinner table with our neighbors. I am for emergency housing in hotels, but more for long-term housing, particularly item D on today's agenda. Let me explain. Our family wanted to own our own home, but like most Vancouverites, home ownership was well outside of our reach, and so we got creative. We bought a home together, share life together, sharing childcare, cooking responsibilities, even walking the dog. I tell you this because we needed to think outside the box to get housing for our family. Now, we continue to think outside the box to find housing for our neighbors. With experience in residential and commercial real estate, a strong Salvation Army background, I've created a development company, Steadfast Developments, a social impact development company with an all-female-led company that is going strong on a collaborative, grassroots revitalization project in the downtown east side that identifies long-term, wraparound supportive housing as one of 6 major aspects to radically revitalizing the neighborhood. I know that today's topic is about emergency and urgency for our friends at the Strathcona encampment. And everyone in the media, Vancouverites and council are saying that we need long-term supportive housing in my neighborhood. That's why myself, a mother of 4, who has chosen to raise my children in the downtown east side, created a development company to address not just affordable housing and social enterprise, but the root cause itself, which is poverty. I commend you today in taking action, but what I believe we need is not just emergency housing, but we need a long-term solution for myself and my neighbors. I believe that Steadfast Developments is the people's developer and a large part of Vancouver's homelessness solution. I would like to suggest that any impact developers like myself that want to build long-term affordable housing in the DEOD should have all permits expedited within 6 months and full support from City Council to do so. And because we build with cross-laminated timber, we can build at a rate of 1 story per week. UBC is an example of this. Not only is this an environmental product, but we can build at the rate of this housing demand. Currently, we are looking to purchase 2 major sites in the DEOD, which would increase affordable housing units by 350, with 3 other sites in mind. We can't do that without the support of Council. I am willing to work diligently with my team at Steadfast, other grassroots organizations, and my neighbors to find a solution to this problem we all care about. Our team has vision, passion, and tenacity to see homelessness end in our community through strategic, proven revitalization models from around North America. At another time, I'd like to share with you what those successful models look like. Thank you for taking action today, and I look forward to working together.
Great. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. There are no questions to you, but very much appreciate you being here to speak to us or going through the being online for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So we are on to speaker number 9, Stuart Little.
Chair Carr, that speaker is not here.
Okay. Speaker number 10, Desiree Strathcona.
That speaker is also not here.
Okay. The speaker number 11, Claudette Kennedy.
Speaker is not here as well.
Speaker number 12, Tucker Everlasting.
Speaker is not here.
Okay, thank you. Speaker number 13 is Jason Trudeau.
The speaker is not here.
Speaker number 14, John White.
Speaker is not here.
Thank you. Speaker number 15, John Jagger.
Speaker is not here.
Okay, speaker number 16, Nicole Luongo.
Speaker is just making her way in.
Great. Okay, thank you. We'll be patient.
Hi there.
Hello. Yes.
So my name's Nicole Luongo. I'm here today in opposition of the motion. Just a bit about me. I have been supporting KT the Strathcona encampment since kind of day one. My role has been to kind of at times liaise between residents of Strathcona nearby and members of the camp. I work under camp leadership. And I just want to emphasize that the motion that is being proposed is really much of what we've seen already. All 3 options, are kind of functionally the same, regardless of whether people are in hotel rooms or a quote-unquote sanctioned campsite. We do know that they're going to be kind of overseen by paid employees, and we know that doesn't work. That's why presently the Strathcona encampment has to exist because folks, some folks were offered housing when Oppenheimer was decamped and accepted it and very quickly realized it wasn't livable for them due to cleanliness issues and the surveillance kind of model that it's premised on. We saw a bit of that come out of Crab Park as well. And now I've spoken to many people who are homeless in Strathcona Park who have said, yes, I went to the Howard Johnson Hotel, which was purchased by the city, or I went to the Granville Hostel and I lasted a night or maybe a week. And so my concern is that, or one of my concerns, I should say, is that this motion is really going to just perpetuate the same ineffective cycle that we've seen. And I want to talk about something that maybe won't be talked about otherwise, and just it was mentioned that BC Housing has now enlisted the support of the Portland Hotel Society to conduct kind of a quick and dirty census, if you will. So I've seen members of the PHS around camp in the last few days. They showed up wheeling a big cart of juice boxes. They grabbed 2 residents from camp who are kind of familiar faces as quote-unquote peers. These peers do not get paid for their labor, I'll note, which is a recurring theme. But basically, they went around and talked to people, and the data that's going to be generated is going to be enormously distorted because a number of people have absolutely no trust in BC Housing. They don't want to talk to nonprofits because they've been burned time and time again. So what you're going to see is a gross selection bias in that the only people who are going to willingly give their information are people who are going to have kind of disparate lived experience and perspectives from the people who keep showing up at homeless encampments. So I'm concerned that this, so-called census is going to be done in a few weeks, which is remarkably quickly. And coming from the academic world, I can tell you it would never pass peer review because methodologically it's highly flawed. And you're going to have it used now as leverage to kind of push forward quote-unquote solutions that are not going to work for most people. I've talked to people after they've, been given these questionnaires, and they've said explicitly, I'm going to throw this out. I'm not going to submit this. And that is happening over and over. So far the callers have mentioned, drug addiction and mental illness as being things that are scary and disruptive. Absolutely they are, but the proposed solutions that I've heard on the phone, stick people in hospitals, for example, those are not solutions either. I can speak as someone who has been involuntarily committed to multiple psychiatric wards in my life history. When you arrive there, you are sedated beyond recognition. You are discharged without any sort of formal plan or follow-up support. And again, it is acutely traumatizing to be behind locked doors and dehumanized by psychiatric professionals who have no vested interest in your life having positive outcomes. So in terms of actual feasible solutions, I think in the short term, you need to leave people as they are. But to make things a little more kind of functional for all parties involved, including housed neighbors, particularly in Strathcona at this particular juncture, the city needs to support what is happening by equipping the space with appropriate facilities. There's a GoFundMe that has been started where people are trying to raise $25,000 so that homeless people, nearly 400 of them, can shower. That's ridiculous. People don't have safe washroom facilities. I mean, if the city would just kind of step up a little bit, because yes, overall, broadly, homelessness is a primarily provincial and federal issue, and they need to step up as well. But in the short term, the city can do things like let people shower, treat them with some dignity, because I can tell you, again, from lived experience, I was homeless myself for many years and addicted to every drug. If you are treated like an animal, you're gonna start behaving like one. So my time's out. I have a lot more to say, but that's that for now.
Chair Carr, I believe you are muted.
You are right. There was background noise here, so I did mute myself. Thank you for reminding me. Thank you. You do have questions, so starting first with Councillor Kirby-Yung. Go ahead, Councillor Kirby-Yung, for up to 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and sharing your perspective. What would you like to see happen?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last part of that.
And so what would you like to see happen if I hear you loud and clear that you don't think that these solutions, you said that they're more of the same and they're not going to provide dignified or meaningful outcomes. What would you like to see instead?
So I would like to see genuine consultation take place with camp leadership and residents at camp who have very disparate life experiences. We can't brush them or paint them all with the same brush, if you will. Some people, yes, have addiction issues and mental health issues, some don't. So I want to see meaningful consultation, which is a lengthy procedure because you do have to kind of build rapport and trust with people. You can't simply arrive and expect to kind of extract information from them in 2 weeks. So meaningful consultation and a genuine investment in sustainable long-term housing solutions. And some people will want or need, quote unquote, supported housing where there's a little more infrastructure in place and others won't. But the rushing is not going to bode well for anyone.
Okay, so one thing that Council will discuss today, and Councillor Bly referenced it earlier, is the idea of a disaster relief shelter type, sort of a pandemic response, disaster response type, large shelter, temporary type of structure outdoors with support. That could be one or multiple locations. Am I hearing that you do or don't support that, or you favor longer term housing options over that?
Long-term housing. I don't understand how that will be different from what's already happened.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Wiebe, you are next for up to 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for speaking today. One of the comments you talked about is someone going to the Howard Johnson and only staying a night. I was down talking to the leadership in Strathcona, and one of the gentlemen talked about that it was the first time he had trauma-based, Indigenous-led counseling at the Howard Johnson, and that he was really impressed with how it was being run. So from my conversations with the camp, a lot of some of the supports and what is working, but you had a very different conversation from what you're hearing from the camp. So I would just like to hear your perspective on why you think when I was there with leadership of the camp, I'm hearing very different things than you.
Well, can I ask how many times you've been to camp?
Multiple.
Okay, interesting. I haven't seen you there. I'm there fairly regularly. Camp has, a sacred fire, as I'm sure you know. It does have culturally safe, supported healing modalities, if you will, being implemented. And I've seen remarkable kind of transformations in people who, some of them, have significantly reduced or eliminated their substance use because they also feel safe. So, I mean, it seems like we're in agreement that those are both vital kind of services to provide. So if they're already happening somewhere, why break up a group? Why displace and dislocate people again if what we're advocating for already exists?
Well, from the elder that we heard around the fire talked about how Howard Johnson gave him a roof over his head. He felt how special it was and was able to focus on the trauma healing, which is something that he's been in and out of facilities before and never had that Indigenous-led trauma counseling. And so for me, it was really, I think that we do need to look at those long-term solutions. And I think that one of the things I've heard a lot from the camp was trauma. And so we are trying to ensure that whatever solutions we come up as a city really start to be culturally sensitive and deal with that trauma component of it. And really appreciate you coming to speak today. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Great. And you do, thank you very much, Councillor Wiebe. Councillor Swanson, go ahead with your questions for up to 3 minutes.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Nicole. Really appreciate it. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how many volunteers are helping out at the camp and what kinds of things they do.
Yeah, certainly. There are, I don't know the exact number, but I think pushing 200. People have different roles. There's kind of a social media connection happening. So some people come and volunteer in the kitchen. Some people do cleanup. Some people do laundry. Like I said, I was kind of liaison.
Laundry?
Sorry?
They do laundry?
Yes. Yeah, there's a group that comes and picks up dirty laundry and cleans it and then brings it back to campers, depending on the weather, I think about 2 to 3 times a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I heard that there was I met a nurse who was there too.
Yes, there is a medic tent that's been set up. So there is a rotation of volunteer nurses and affiliated health professionals. Occasionally, acupuncturists come in. There is a library, so we have some volunteer librarians come up. There are books that people can read. There's some access to Wi-Fi on occasion. And of course, there are fire keepers who are trained under Indigenous leadership, and that is, a serious position to have. And so they hold space for folks that maybe are contending with, trauma or particular incidences that have come up. And yeah, they work through that. There are also often, Indigenous drumming groups that come in. So in terms of, cultural appropriateness and cultural safety, I would say that Camp KT is very much a model. And my major concern is that if we rush forward with something like a sanctioned and monitored encampment or hotels, all of that is going to be stripped away.
If we could have, say, a hotel that had those features in it with volunteers and Indigenous led and lots of peers, do you think that could work?
I mean, it's still a hotel
People
room.
would be inside.
I mean, what I'm hearing is that people want sustainable housing. So emergency hotel rooms, are not going to do it. And I fear that in the kind of, again, movement, people who have formed connections with one another are going to lose those.
So what I was thinking is that it's going to take 2 or 3 years to build the modular housing.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could and there's lots of hotels that are empty now, and you could put a little fridge in them, and they have their own bathrooms, which is really good for COVID. Mm-hmm. So if you could have some that would be managed in the way that you're talking about, and then after 2 or 3 years, when the modular was built, people could actually go into a home, and hopefully that could be managed the way you're talking about too, at least for some of them.
Councillor Swanson, you are over time, and possibly if the speaker could just answer very briefly to that. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, I mean, if those features were to exist, again, the campers are not homogenous. Not everyone wants the same thing. So I'm not speaking on behalf of 400 people. You would have to consult every single person. And I can't emphasize that enough. But in terms of, having things culturally safe and appropriate and whatnot, that would have to go through people who know about these things. I'm not Indigenous, so I can't speak on that. And I don't think the city has the right to speak on that either, given that they are operating and profiting on stolen land.
Okay, thank you, dear.
Thank you. And you do still have more questions, so thank you, Councillor Swanson. And Councillor Nova, up to you for up to 3 minutes.
Thanks so much. I thank you very much for your presentation. I just had a couple of questions, and I don't have very much time, so I wish I'd had more time to ask more. But the last answer that you gave, that you'd have to ask each and every individual person, this is what my question pertains to. Even if we were to take actions, do you think that if a group of people didn't appreciate, whatever it might be, the disaster relief or a hotel or, a city sanctioned encampment, I don't support that one. But if that's what council decided and it was funded, do you think that there might be a break off to continue on with models like Strathcona? Or do you think that that people would comply and move forward with a city-led approach?
So sorry, are you asking if another homeless encampment would appear, or?
Yes, yeah. And you don't have to answer my questions, but you have experience that I don't, and I'd really love to have your opinion on that.
I can't imagine it wouldn't. There are some people who vehemently do not want to live in supported housing or hotels or anything that is kind of monitored. So,
okay, so
they're still going to exist.
Have something different. Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Also, just in the City of Vancouver, other levels of government, we've come under scrutiny as to and I'm just saying what's been reported about funding for different organizations or how the funding's dispersed or distributed. Is there anything in Camp KT about the model that you can? I mean, are there paid individuals that organize? I mean, just looking to understand sort of how that works, considering I know very well how it works in the nonprofit sector with BC Housing and RFPs, but is anyone in the organization paid?
No.
To your knowledge?
No. Emphatically, no one is being paid. And that is kind of a rumor that I've had to dispel on multiple occasions. No one is being paid. People do it because they care. And the reason I have been kind of invited to be present is because I am not affiliated with an organization or an institution, and I'm no longer an academic, so I don't look to personally benefit. I just have a long history of homelessness and addiction and trauma myself, and so these are my people. And that is what you'll hear from leadership. This is not some sort of paid operation.
Thank you very much for answering the questions. I understand they can be difficult to answer as well. Just very quickly, are there public safety concerns, like safety for the public, as in people in the encampment? I've seen pictures of barbed wire around tents. I imagine that would be quite concerning to run into in the middle of the night. Is that a concern of yours right now?
I mean, yeah, there are public safety concerns associated with living in poverty and being homeless, regardless of location. There are public safety concerns with being criminalized. There are, people's rates of drug use and, disorderly conduct go up every time they encounter a VPD officer. Not having privacy is an enormous public safety issue. It completely undermines, a human right, and people's mental health deteriorates.
Thank you very much. That's my time.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor DiGenova, and thank you so much. That is all the questions. I very much appreciate your patience in answering all the questions and for speaking with us. Thank you.
Yep, thanks very much.
Okay, moving on to speaker number 17, Angela Petterkin.
Chair Carr, the speaker is not here.
Okay. Speaker number 18, Karina Castro.
Go ahead, Karina.
Hi.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. You have up to 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Give me 1 second. So, I acknowledge that we're gathered on the unceded and occupied territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. KT Tent City recognizes and upholds the sovereignty of these Indigenous nations over these lands and sees the city of Vancouver as an illegitimate occupying force. I'm speaking against Kennedy Stewart's motion to create government-sanctioned tent cities. These supposed solutions, the three-pronged approach that Kennedy Stewart has talked about, don't just impact people living down at KT Tent City. Now that the eviction ban is officially lifted and finding jobs is becoming more difficult, we can only expect that the number of people who cannot pay rent and who will be pushed out on the streets will swell. On top of that, many people who were given temporary housing following the dismantling of Oppenheimer Park into hotels like the Lugat, which was formerly known as the Howard Johnson, are now facing eviction with no real possibility of long-term permanent housing. These approaches are not a solution. City workers and cops have referred to the management of poor people as, in their words, shoveling water. The city spent millions of dollars on approaches to manage low-income people around the clock so that respectable members of society, I'm talking homeowners and business owners, people like that, are insulated from the poverty and social disorder that Indigenous and working-class people are forced into. These solutions that Kennedy is proposing is more of the same. If Stewart's motion to create sanctioned camps is approved, it will increase the power that police have over the poor on the streets of Vancouver to harass, brutalize, humiliate, and murder our working class and Indigenous kin. If there are sanctioned zones where unhoused people are expected to be, our low-income relations will be corralled into these areas by workers, pigs, and bylaw. Sanctioned camps are an attack on people's resistance against poverty and police violence at tent cities. Sanctioned camps will tighten the regulations of individual homeless people who seek shelter in public parks and managing, depoliticizing, and ridding tent cities of their value as potential spaces of collective resistance, making them nothing more than cheap outdoor shelters. And not so cheap, because we know from last year's assessment by MOCRE that they would cost about $1 to $2 million to operate. Creating regulated tent cities makes homelessness permanent. Low-income people are told over and over to be patient, to be reasonable, to be nice. And we're tired of fake solutions. Low-income, Indigenous, and working-class people shouldn't have to cooperate in their own containment because these solutions are killing us. We don't need more indoor or outdoor shelters or to be forever crammed into more SROs called modular housing. The short-term solution is to abolish the bylaws and stop enforcing criminal code laws that criminalize low-income, working-class, and Indigenous people. That means ending all anti-camping, anti-vending, and anti-loitering bylaws, stopping the enforcement of the province's Safe Streets Act that criminalizes poverty, stopping the enforcement of all laws under the War on Drugs, stopping the enforcement of BC's Trespass Act so that people can rest and sleep, stopping all evictions now and forever, stopping the outlaw private security guard patrols hired by the business improvement associations, and defunding, disarming, and abolishing the Vancouver Police Department. The long-term solution is that we need permanent, adequate housing where we can be with our children, where we can cook, where we can be with our pets, and where we can make decisions for ourselves, not some paid worker who has the leverage to get residents kicked out over a personal grudge. The last thing that I want to end on is a slogan that we all came up with together at a meeting of residents, is that the only thing that's going to save lives is permanent housing.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to remind you and all of the speakers who, in speaking to council, to speak respectfully of other people and groups of people. That's a very important rule that we all follow in being in either our real or virtual council chambers. You do have questions from Councillor Kirby. If you could, your background noise, speaker, is quite considerable, so I'm not sure if you can do anything about that, but it's sometimes hard to hear you. So just to try and get yourself into a situation that is not quite as noisy would be helpful. You have questions from Councillor Kirby. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I just have one question. I just want to be really clear, and that is, if council were to move forward with the option of a temporary disaster relief shelter, do you think that the residents in Strathcona would voluntarily leave for that option?
You're cutting out a little bit. Can you repeat your question?
Sure. I said if council were to move forward with a temporary disaster relief shelter, one of the options, do you think that the residents of the Strathcona camp would voluntarily leave that camp?
So the main focus of the question that I hear you saying is that I think that people are tired of being criminalized and regulated, and so a lot of the emergency relief planning that goes on is just more of the same. It's just more regulation, more management of poor people. And if you talk to the folks down here, many of the people are just tired of that. And so, yeah, like they would resist that. And if you if there's discussion about dismantling the tent city, like really, like what are you dismantling the tent city for? What kind of housing are you providing people? Is it more SROs? Is it more shelters? These are the very conditions that people are trying to avoid, because they're not treated like people. They're treated like children, where other people have to be making decisions for them, and folks are sick of that.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. And thank you. That is it for your questions. Appreciate you being here. Thank you. And
thank you.
Moving on to speaker number 19, Rafael Torres. Rafael Torres? Yes, we can hear you. If you could just try once again, and your sound is not very clear.
Hello? Hello, can
yes.
you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, that's a bit better. Thank you very much.
Okay, good.
And go ahead. Yeah, you have up to 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, my name is Rafael. I'm a resident of Strathcona, and I've been for 2 months. I've lived in community with the people here. Because I know that my fate is tied together with them. If I ever fail to pay rent 1 month, I'll be here with them. I'm food insecure. I depend on the food donations that are delivered here to eat as well. And for the past 2 months, I've been talking a lot with people here, and I've gotten to have a pretty good idea what life on the street is like, and what people here want, and what they think it's the actual best practice for how to deal with the housing crisis, with the opioid crisis, and currently the COVID-19 crisis. So what I think of this motion is that the housing here being offered is absolutely inadequate. The framing of these measures as emergency and temporary only makes it clear that the universal housing, that it's the uncompromisable goal of the Kennedy Trudeau 10 City, is not the goal of this motion or even this government. And for the past 2 months, the Camp KT has swallowed with hundreds of poor working people who have failed to pay rent in the criminal housing market, and have also, after that, fled from what they told me is high levels of surveillance and abuse and so-called emergency housing facilities that currently look a lot more like human warehouses than anything resembling a home. And it's clear to me as well that after listening into this meeting, that the real goal here is unstated. Right? It's not to give people temporary housing because the mayor cares about people's ability to have dignity and to live comfortably and safely. It's all about dismantling the camp and displacing yet another couple hundred of people, on the street. And you've seen what happened with the other attempts to do the same thing, put people in hotels after Oppenheimer. These conditions are not adequate. This is not what people want. They don't want to be surveilled. They don't want to be managed. They want permanent housing because permanent housing saves lives. That's what they want. That's what they tell me, and I believe them.
Great. And that's your statement to us?
Yes, that's it.
That's great. Thank you very much. There are no questions to you, but we very much appreciate your speaking with us on this issue. Thank you.
Okay.
Speaker number 20, Kylie Kennedy.
Good job.
Speaker 20, Kylie Kennedy.
Go ahead, Kylie.
Kennedy, if you are Kennedy, if you're on the line.
Can Kylie go last when you re-say the name?
If there's no response now, I will absolutely go over the names again. There, I will go through the list at the end of the speakers list. I will go through it again. Although I do want to note that there have been 2 additions, Curse K and Kylie K, and I'm wondering if that is you, if they've been added to the end of my list.
Yeah, so they don't have phones of their own, which is why we're using my phone. And so it would be really appreciated if they could just be called at the end, and then they'll be able to speak.
Yeah, they are at the end of the list. So are you prepared to speak now? Or are you, because I will be calling all the names once more at the end of this list.
So I won't be speaking right now, no.
Okay, thank you. That's great. We'll move on to speaker 21, Karen Lane. Is Karen Lane on the line?
Chair Kerr, she's not on the line.
Yes, got it. Okay. Speaker number 22, Nathan Crompton.
Nathan Crompton is not on the line.
Okay. Speaker number 23, Zoe Luba.
Hi.
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Go ahead for up to 5 minutes.
Hi. I want to start by acknowledging that I'm speaking on the unceded and occupied territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples that remain under colonial occupation at the hands of the Canadian state. I'm not going to say too much here, but I want to just emphasize my agreement with Nicole and Raphael and Karina about some of the really, really concerning issues with what's being proposed. When I read these three options that Kennedy Stewart tweeted out, I was just really, really disturbed that this is kind of considered an adequate response. Permanent housing saves lives. None of these temporary state surveilled emergency quote unquote housing, heavy quotation marks around housing, because it really does just kind of seem like a warehouse and a place of surveillance for people who are already facing criminalization and surveillance at the hands of the state. It's just not permanent housing, and it's just not adequate in any way. There's no autonomy for people. Very, very disturbed and upset by what's being kind of proposed. It really seems like just a way to dismantle what is an amazing community who's, keeping themselves safe and supporting themselves and surviving in a world where a lot of the people who own businesses and have wealth want these people to die or don't care whether they live or die. So speaking in opposition to these three proposals of inadequate, temporary, surveillance-heavy housing, which isn't housing. It seems more like a kind of like a warehouse prison type thing. So that's all.
Okay. Thank you so much. I very much appreciate you speaking to us. There are no questions for you, so thank you. We're on to speaker 24, Emily Luba.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
can you hear me okay?
We can hear you clearly. Go ahead for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. So I'll first recognize I'm calling from the occupied Coast Salish territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh peoples. And you already kind of mentioned this, but it's a double check. You will be going back to the speakers who were not around when you first called their names?
Yes. Yes, I will reread the names starting from the top of the list again of those who have not spoken, and I will go through that list once in the order.
So, and one more super quick thing. We also be giving them a call with the number they've listed. I've seen people miss before when they just weren't. Will you be contacting them in some way, or just reading the name out?
Yeah, Madam City Clerk, I wonder if you could answer that question.
Yes, Chair Card, the speakers have been contacted by email, so I would suggest that if they're not following our live stream or following the Twitter updates, to check their email as well.
Will you be giving them a call too if they've listed the phone number? Question for the clerk?
No, we would not be calling them.
Okay, so
is there any way?
I think I think that the clerk has verified that what the process is. So if you want to continue with your comments, that would be great.
Okay, I was just asking because one time I received a call when before my turn to speak at a motion back a few months ago. So I'm just wondering why it's shifted. Yes,
it's probably a public hearing.
Oh, okay.
Point of order, Swanson here.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes,
Councillor Swanson.
I'm wondering if people don't have emails, maybe could we make an exception and give them a call in the interest of accessibility and equity?
Madam Clerk, over to you.
Chair Kerr, yes, we can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Ms. Luba, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll also just say I'm not speaking from a place of being an expert. I didn't study zoning. I didn't study law, so but I don't think you have to be an expert to speak on these things. And I appreciate that you're also doing calls to make this as accessible as possible. Okay, so the first thing I want to point to is number 4 in the motion. It says a disproportionately high number of unsheltered residents are Indigenous people, many of whom are survivors of residential schools and other deplorable vestiges of our colonial past. Colonial past. It's not a colonial past. It's very much a colonial present. Colonialism is still happening, and I have an issue with the phrasing of that sentence because I don't think it recognizes the reality that we are currently living in. Okay, secondly, so to people who spoke and might be listening and have expressed some fear of people who are using drugs, who are on the streets, I really want you to sit with this and ask yourself, why are you scared? Why? And really just sit with that. And honestly, if you want to talk through some of these feelings, I'm happy to. I'll even say my phone number, 604-715-5488. If you think people without shelter, people who want to stay outside or who have to stay outside are scary and you're scared, you have this fear, reach out to me. We'll have a chat. I'm happy to explain to you in depth, one-on-one, super chill, why you should not feel this fear and where it is, where it might be coming from. And also, I'll go back to a speaker near the beginning mentioned that people should just be in hospitals. And I have spoken to many people who present as being on the streets, who've gone to hospitals and been treated like, excuse my language, but like absolute trash. Either denied treatment, accused of things they're not doing, gossiped about. They do not, that people refuse to go to the hospital when they want to go. I've heard them refuse to go to the hospital when they need medical treatment because of the absolute crap treatment they received. So I don't think hospitals are the answer. And as I'll echo what Nicole was saying, Raphael and Karina and Zoe, I also don't think what is being proposed with motion is the answer. And I'll go more into that. Okay, thirdly, I'm cautious of not wanting to homogenize anyone living in Strathcona, anyone living on the streets. These are different people. Everyone has their own perspectives, own desires, own needs, own wants. So we shouldn't just be clumping them all together. And to go back to what Nicole said, we really do need proper consultations and should be really aware of a lot of history of BC housing and social workers, particularly Indigenous communities, coming in there and asking a whole bunch of questions, making promises they can't keep or just don't care to keep, and fucking people over. Like, that can be really traumatizing. So consultations need to be done properly, and that will take time. So, fourthly, I will just emphasize we need permanent solutions, as has been said, as has been voiced, permanent solutions. As simply another emergency shelter or a state-managed, sanctioned tent city, it's just going to continue to recreate the same problem. It's not even a Band-Aid. It can honestly be quite jail-like. And I have a story, a couple stories from this. So when the strip was cleared in Whalley, in Surrey, it was devastating. It was a community. People supported one another. They cared for one another. They saved each other's lives. And when the city went in, destroyed people's belongings, push them out of their homes, and the solution was modular housing. Oh, everybody gets a home. Number one, the modular housing, people felt surveilled. They were not given agency. To everyone here who's listening who rents in the market, think about what's in your home, what you have. You don't answer. You don't answer to yes.
Yeah, Ms. Luba, that you have run out of time, so I've given you just a little bit more time, but you are past your 5 minutes. So thank you.
Thank you. So, anyways, I don't trust city governments because I don't want what happened on the Strip to happen again, because the modular housing was also evicted. So anyone who was in that modular housing was then violently kicked out this August. It was absolutely beyond words. Thank you. My last final point would be, let's talk about the market.
I'm sorry, but I have to be fair to all speakers. Yes, thank you very much.
That's fine, but we should. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, moving on, Council, we're on to Speaker 25, who had maybe on your list is seen as withdrawn, but they have.
Chair Carr?
Yes?
I think we should be on speaker number 24.
I believe that was 24. Oh, I believe that just was 24, Emily Luba, so we're moving on to 20. I've got notes for both 23 and 24.
Yes, you're correct. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Speaker 25, I believe Kelsey Mulick is on the line. Is that?
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. There is almost there is background noise that makes it very, very hard.
Is this better?
That is better. Yes. Thank you. Go ahead for a minute.
Awesome. Thank you, and thank you, Council, for having the moment to share a few thoughts. So I think listening to everyone, this is such a complex issue, and there is so much going on right now in the world that it is understandable that people are on both, wherever you reside, are feeling pretty passionate about this. And so I don't have so much I'm not going to take a lot of time, but one thing that I think is really important, and I suppose I should say I do live in Strathcona, I am housed, but what is abundantly clear, whether you're listening to those who are residing in the encampment or from people within the community, is it feels like history is repeating itself and that we're not looking at the actual issues in the sense of what the long term is. And so while I do think that immediate action does need to be taken to support the people, I think, residing within the encampment to ensure safety both for them and I think for people in the community, I also feel like what's missing here is the intent and planning for long term. And now like a long-term strategy with timelines and dates and objectives and all those things that actually has a lot of public dialogue and consideration and consultation on that, including those residing within the encampment, those who live within communities. I'm kind of stunned to have been watching everything go down and to see sort of the same similar solutions like the hotels suggested again. And I think what's missing here is there's the short term, but yes, I totally believe something needs to happen, but I also think there is a real gap in a long-term collaborative solution that needs to be being completed in tandem with whatever the short-term action is. And so I just wanted to call that out. It feels like a task force that's aligned, that's collaborative, that's working on this together, and it may exist and I may not be aware of it. But I don't feel like there's clear, tangible goals. I know, which has been stated previously, that previous mayor kind of went out on a limb and had a huge statement about ending homelessness, and I think we can all agree that is a very lofty goal. But I think there's an ability to put in objectives and plans in place that can lead to maybe a percentage of that, or putting some actual targets and key accountabilities in place to ensure that we actually see some change. Because regardless of the current situation, it's not like the precariously housed haven't existed in Vancouver for a very long time. And we've been, from my research, a lot of money has gone into the downtown east side and gone into programs, and yet I don't think we're seeing a sustainable long-term solution. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah, thank you very much for your coming to talk or be on the line to talk to us. Very much appreciated. You have no questions this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
On to speaker number 26, Robert Petrie.
The speaker is just making.
Thank you very much for your.
Hello?
Yes. Yes. Hello.
Hi. Hi.
Wait a second. Before.
Sorry?
We
cutting
cannot
out.
hear you. We cannot hear you for the background
Hello?
noise.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. And it would be helpful if you didn't have the live streaming of the meeting on in the background.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Is that better? Oh, it's just, sorry.
Yeah.
We have the live streaming in the background, so she was like.
Yeah, there still
that
is
okay?
a lot of background noise. There still is a lot of background noise. It's very hard to hear
Uh-huh.
you. If you could.
I'm getting in trouble for background noise. Yeah. Sorry, ma'am. We're in a park. In a park. That's why. Hello.
Yeah, perhaps if you can isolate yourself as best as possible, that would be maybe
Okay.
helpful.
Oh yeah, maybe. We'll try headphones.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah. Okay. Let's
Is that
try
better?
that. Yeah, that is better.
Right on.
Go,
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yep.
It's a go.
Up to 5
so
minutes.
I just read
Go
my.
ahead.
Okay. That's right. Okay, here we go. My name is Robert Petrie. I was a resident of Tent City, Oppenheimer Park. I'm now at the Howard Johnson on Granville, which has been renamed the Lugat and is run by Atira, the property management company. I'm 50 years old and I was working homeless. I am in the process to receive long-term housing and currently in dispute to keep it before I join the ranks of attrition of people as we near the finalization of that process. I consider myself before to be in the percentage of people in Tent City who are here due to displacement based on a mix of fiscal, rental, and care issues, usually mixed with a factor of some personal tragedy, which is maybe 40% of the nebulous demographic pie that we talked about earlier, which is never mentioned. The problem, ongoing, in basic terms, the same as they've been in the past. Interesting thing is that both sides of this equation are victims of it, both corporate, suburban, and the street worlds. These people that you talked about before take the shortest path to the goal without consideration of the next two sets afterward. When you do that, it creates a negative result and becomes short-sighted and leads to an actual cost. And that cost is to take something away from all of us as a collective and as individuals. Permanent housing saves lives, and in order to gain these basic and other necessities, we have to give up basic rights. And if we do this at the cost of ourselves, then what is the point? The point becomes accountability, foresight, and caring for the result and the effect it has on others. I said it was a miracle to go from being homeless to Tent City to the process for long-term housing. Now my viewpoint is changing as I see the effects of the community around me. I see people discarded and broken and die in the process. There's a current infringement on my basic rights and the rights of others, and my own gratitude cannot replace the morality of that man. Not everyone understands the hardest thing to do is the right thing, and now we're taking the easiest path possible towards a dangerous precipice. How we treat ourselves at this level of society really defines us as a society. Some famous guy said that we're in a whole different world than we were in a year ago, and the decisions we make today will define us going forward. So hopefully we will all be good looking at. Hello.
Okay.
That's
yes.
it.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you. You don't have any questions, but very much appreciate you speaking to council today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'll pass you on back to the. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Well, we're now on to speaker 27, Katie Lewis. Yeah, Madam City Clerk.
Katie Lewis is not on the line. A reminder email has been sent.
Okay, thank you. Speaker number 28, Claudio Ansi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead for up to 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Claudio. I would like to start saying that I'm a proudly Canadian citizen. I immigrated to Canada 18 years ago, and I'm a resident of Strathcona from the day that I landed. I'm also a homeowner. And I would like also to speak in my own behalf today, but also feeling confident that all Canadian immigrants like me and all those before me who found in this country the opportunity to build a home, to build this place that we all call home based on tremendous effort, hard work, and sacrifice. I feel enormously grateful for all the opportunities this country gives us and still have for all of us. As a resident of Strathcona, I feel confident to be speaking also in the name of thousands of Chinese people who arrived to this neighborhood building the train roads, in the name of thousands of Italians, Irish, British, people that cut the trees to clear the land, to build the houses and where we are living today. We are all aware of the importance to have equal opportunities and the need to have the basic needs like shelter, clothes, food. Everything needs to be equally distributed to ensure an equal line to start for everybody. I think that something like that, for us, parents in Strathcona, who send our kids to preschool, school, after school care, everything in the Strathcona neighborhood, we already know probably better than any other parent in Vancouver. I think that this is the common ground that we on who we can all speak today. I would like to remark today also the immediate importance that has the transfer to the Strathcona Park to any kind of city-owned facility. Only from any city-owned facility we can start helping to find the solutions, to find the help for all the provincial and federal help wherever it is needed. Any day this incumbent statement Strathcona Park only shows the profound disrespect and contempt that the authorities, and particularly both for, show to thousands of residents. We do not deserve to pay the price of the consequence of have this incumbent in our neighborhood. If you not take this campaign to some city-owned facility regulated, you are condemning the whole East Side community to live at the edge of what is right now a parallel state. Now it's a legitimate parallel state of criminal behavior, drug abuse and trafficking, prostitution, mountain of garbage, condom use, needles everywhere in any corner of our neighborhood. Not only Strathcona neighborhoods, Kitsaline or Curtis and Lamb, but any neighborhood in Vancouver deserve to go through what we are going on right now. The existence of this situation in any neighborhood park only creates separation and division in between the neighbors. It is extremely important that the authorities take care of this matter and taking the hand in this matter. I particularly surprised the way that the Strathcona Park supporters do not have any empathy for all the damage they are creating to our community. Don't show any respect for us that we know better than anybody what it means to live on the east side. Our kids learn to walk in Strathcona Park. They learn to ride their bikes. They also learn to pick up the needles. They also learn to know, do not be barefoot on the grass. We are working so hard to build this community. We are creative. We are open heart. We are the ones that do all the work. We create this community. And it's very important that any community in this city need to have the impact that we are having right here. Only for some city-owned facility we can start thinking this is the time to have creative solutions. It's not about money. It's about to be creative. Of course, we all deserve a permanent shelter or a house, but this is not something that we can create from a tree. We all need to work together on this, but this one needs to be based on respect. And this is exactly what I think that all the Strathcona neighbors, we don't have today. This is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You don't have any questions, but I know that Council would very much appreciate your speaking to us. Thank you.
Thanks.
We're on to speaker 29, Jamie McLaren.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly, so you have up to 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Jamie McLaren, and I'm a Strathcona homeowner living on unceded Indigenous land. And I'm speaking in opposition to the Mayor's motion and in support of Councillor Bly's tabled motion that was circulated a few days ago. So I'm part of a new grassroots neighborhood movement called Strathcona Stands for Safe Homes. And we're a diverse and inclusive community of people who live in owned homes, rented homes, care homes, co-op housing, social housing, RVs, and tents. So we're housed and unhoused. And we all care for our neighborhood and we look out for each other. So as you know, in recent months, hundreds of our unhoused neighbors have been repeatedly displaced into unsafe and unsupported park spaces. And as a consequence of that, but as a consequence of many other things, our community has experienced a steady increase in personal crime, property crime, and public health hazards. We attribute these issues to government inaction and neglect in the face of very urgent public health and housing crises. So our small neighborhood, as you heard Claudio mention, is disproportionately impacted by these crises. And we see our elected officials, including this council, doing little to help us. As the newest generation of Strathcona community activists, we will not sit back and accept more discrimination and neglect. We stand on the shoulders of SPODA and the militant mothers of Raymer to demand our government, including this city council, take immediate action to ensure our collective health and safety. So we stand for safe homes for all. And we're engaged in a number of strategies to spur you and other governments into urgent action, and these include a tax resistance campaign, a letter writing campaign, direct action events, and possible legal action. So the tax resistance campaign, which you may have heard about, includes 3 demands that were drafted after consultation with Camp KT leadership. And they're as follows. Number 1, a permanent end to displacement of Camp KT by way of supported relocation to sanctioned and safe refuges away from public park space where at least 300 unhoused local residents can find community, rest, and the essential public services and utilities that they need and deserve. Number 2, a firm commitment from one or more levels of government to build 4,000 units of true social housing across Vancouver on a high priority basis. And number 3, a 3-fold increase to the amount of sanitation and mental health support resources directed towards restoring public health and safety in Strathcona. So if adopted and executed well, Councillor Bly's motion would meet the first demand for culturally safe refuges away from park space. The Mayor's motion, on the other hand, appears to involve waiting on a staff report and then waiting on funding commitments and other contingent agreements before it would ever result in responsive action. And our community can't afford to wait on the ifs, ands, and buts of the Mayor's motion. Each passing day brings rapidly increasing danger of tragedy, including fatal tragedy. I think the next council meeting will be your opportunity to lead, if I hear you correctly, and that Councillor Bly's motion will be considered then, and to take extraordinary measures to address extraordinary times. So I encourage you to all look beyond the Mayor's motion and to establish disaster relief measures proposed by Councillor Bly, and then join us and our movement in putting due pressure on our provincial and federal governments to also do the right thing by all citizens, including the unhoused residents of Camp KT. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brody. I very much appreciate you speaking to us, and there are no questions to you right now, so thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on to number 31, Robert Epp. Now, do we have Mr. Epp on the line? Or in person?
Hi, is this good?
Okay, yes. Mr. Epp, yeah, there is a lot of background noise or feedback on your line, so
how's that? Check. Is that better? I'm talking right in the office here. I mean, right in Chambers.
Oh, you are. Okay, that's good. It's a little bit better now. It's just a little bit echoey.
Is it?
Go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Robert Epp. I'm here for, I am actually a downtown East Side resident. I'm in Strathcona. I'm part of the Strathcona community. My children go to Strathcona Elementary. Actually, I live right there. I also work for the Aboriginal Front Door Society. And I'm here today to let you guys know that we have answers for a lot of these things that you guys talked about in terms of the COVID funding. For example, we have been open since the inception of this COVID crisis. We had meetings earlier, and we were all scared that people were dying and stuff like that. And our doors stayed open. We are Aboriginal Front Door Society. We're located right on Main and Hastings. For example, I'll tell you guys, like right now, before the COVID crisis, we were serving to 80 to 100 people per day, like just giving them snacks, meals, and references to find housing and stuff. When the COVID crisis came up, we were serving close to 2,100 people. We had 8 to 10 extra people, peer workers, that were working with us because we had this COVID crisis grants. And yes, and anyways, we were doing all this stuff, and I still am. And now our COVID crisis money has run out. We are broke. Like we're back to our normal staffing, but the demand is still there. The COVID crisis is still happening, and I've got answers for you guys. If you guys want to ask me anything, I've got answers that doesn't cost any money. I mean, it won't cost as much money. You guys are talking about defunding the police, which you guys did, but has anybody actually ever stepped up to actually help out in the community to take away from the burden on the police? I've got answers to that, man. We want to start community. We want to start a community watch and a community outreach that is on par with the COVID crisis, man. We got it. We got it set up. If you guys just want to ask me about it, all you counselors and staff, or the counselors here in Vancouver, especially the mayor, I wanted to talk to too. But yeah, I'm here, man. I'm telling you, these just some of the stats, and I'm getting what I've heard for the last little while is that the federal government and the city and the province, I think you guys should merge together and work together. Talk about taxpayers. Taxpayers don't have to have this whole burden, man. You've already got stuff in place right now in the city of Vancouver that you can use. For example, you talk about how you shut down Stanley Park. I'm making a suggestion that you guys shut down Main Street to save on meats there. All that corridor can be used for washrooms. We already have it in place. I'm telling you, on behalf of the Downtown East Side response team, that we have right now, I'm just doing my sheets here, but we have an answer to that, to shutting down this camp. We have Central City foundations. We have tents. We have it all. We have it arranged. We need participation with the city and with the province and stuff to get going, man. You know, if you guys, these ideas, we're not talking. Everybody's complaining about stuff that can't be done, like that's hard to do, like getting more housing. There's other ways to getting more housings too right now. Oh man, I'm just sitting here. Listen, we could. Oh yes, and also like when Oppenheimer Park, you guys are waiting for a disaster to happen, man. If you don't shut this tent city down and find other answers, there's going to be problems, because right now. Last year, there was how much policing operations? It was like in the millions to watch that place. And also, like, you went through how many, they went through about a fire or 2 fires every week. Now, Tent City over there, it's 4 times the size. You're going to run into a lot of fire hazards over there right now. I'll tell you, people don't have heat, they don't have water running, they don't have washrooms, adequate showers and stuff like that. I've got answers to it right now. You guys want to answer? You guys get together with us downtown East Side guys. Also, you don't need to use $200,000 or whatever it's going to cost for some survey company to come in just to find answers. Why don't you give it to the nonprofits? This money that you guys are trying to find answers to, we've got the answers. Just ask us. We've been collaborating behind closed doors for a long time, and we're just waiting to get. I've been waiting to talk to Mr. Stewart for a long time. And tell them about what we've got. We've got it, man. And I don't think I've got all the answers, but I can tell you that what I come here today is I speak from a lot of people that I work with. We've got answers that a lot of people don't. And I'm just I'm just here to let you guys know that a lot can be done with a little money. It doesn't take a big budget to do it, guys. Thank you. But
Okay, and thank you. I appreciate you coming in person to speak to us. There are no questions to you, but again, thank you for taking the time.
Okay, thank you.
Great. We had two other people added to the speakers list. Number 32, I think it's Kiss K.
Councillor Carr, I believe we missed speaker number 30, Dallas Brody. Dallas Brody is on the line at the moment.
Okay. That's good. We'll proceed then with Dallas Brody. Go ahead, Dallas Brody.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, and can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'm calling in as spokesperson for a Safer Vancouver, and that was on my thing that I submitted. And we would like to be heard on this point that in the face of the escalating crime that we're seeing in the city, together with the aggressive and violent behavior that we're seeing more and more of, it has become difficult for many, especially children and seniors and frontline workers, to feel safe and secure in their homes and where they're living and going about their daily lives. Our goal with A Safer Vancouver is to restore safety and order to our neighborhoods. We are prepared to work with political, judicial, and organizational channels, and we're not particularly interested in having the city seek our input on what solutions are appropriate, because that's what you're elected to do. We have some ideas, but it's impossible for us to have the resources available to you as to what's doable and what's not doable. But we can say this, that there has to be a solution that keeps public safety at the top of the list, no matter what solution is decided upon. The communities that that the group that's been uprooted and moved around, that group has to be in a position of respecting the people that they're living around, and there has to be, as one earlier caller said, a situation of mutual respect. And people need to feel safe and not afraid to live their lives as they used to live them, whether that be walking down the street, going to the park, walking to work, standing at the bus stop. Safety is super important to everyone, and without it, we're headed for really big trouble. Thank you for listening.
And thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us. There are no questions to you, but very much appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're on to speaker 32. 32. I have a Kiss K. So if this person is on the line, we do
there are no questions to you, but very much appreciate it.
Whoops! I think whoever's on the line should.
Speaker 32. Hello.
Yes.
32. I have a Kiss K. So
you need to stop.
Very much appreciate it.
Okay. You need to stop listening to turn off the live streaming function because we can't. That's all we can hear right now. So if you could turn that off, that would be great. And if you are speaker 32, Kiss K, we need a full name.
Hi. So Kiss K isn't here, so she won't be speaking.
Okay. And perhaps you also know whether speaker 33, Kylie K, is there. We also need a full name.
She also isn't here, so she won't be speaking.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay. That's council. That's the end of our list. I will go over the names of everyone from the top of the list who did not speak, and if they are on the line, then or in person, they will have a chance to speak. And I will go over this list once in the order of the list numbers. So starting at the top, speaker number 2, Karen Ward. Okay, speaker number 5, Fiona York. Speaker number 6, Veronica Butler. Speaker number 7, Chrissy Brett. Speaker number 9, Stuart Little. Pardon me, is this speaker number 9, Stuart Little?
Chair Carr, this is the moderator speaking. There's a bunch of people using the same phone number that's calling in today. I believe they're sharing the phone, so I am trying to unmute them to see if they are the ones that haven't shown up in person. So just bear with me while I double check. So give me one moment.
Yes, thank you.
Stuart Little, if you are on the line, you're now unmuted. Please proceed. Stuart Little, if you are on the line, again, you're unmuted. Please proceed. Chair Carr, no one responded to my call.
Okay. Moving on to speaker 10, Desiree Strathcona.
Desiree Strathcona, if you are on the line, you have been unmuted. Please state your full name and proceed. No answer.
Okay, speaker number 11, Claudette Kennedy.
Claudette? Claudette, if you're on the line, your line has been unmuted. No, Chair Carr.
Okay, speaker number 12, Tucker Everlasting.
Tucker Everlasting, if you're on the line, your line has been unmuted.
Yeah, that's okay.
Tucker, if you're on the line, your line has been unmuted.
Yeah. I think they're my.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, hi.
Is this Tucker?
Hi, yes. I'll pass you to Tucker right now. I'm sorry. It's quite difficult to call in. But there's a lot of eager speakers here. So actually Claudette, Desiree, and Tucker Everlasting and Fiona are all here. We just weren't able to call in.
Okay. So we will proceed with Tucker Everlasting.
Okay, sounds good.
Hello?
Yes? Yes. Tucker Everlasting? Yeah,
Yes,
if you could make sure the background noise is minimized, you have up to 5 minutes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, is the noise that you're hearing wind or people talking?
People talking.
Okay. Okay, sorry, you can hear me then?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so, all right, so I've thought a lot about this, but I mean, being on the phone right now, I'm kind of lost for how to start, but I think I should start with saying that a lot of us here were kind of bothered by the fact that we weren't really consulted about anything that's going on there or what's happening today. Nobody was really told that. In fact, there's some good people here that volunteered their time and came and talked to us about what was happening there or what our options were or what the city might be thinking. So from what I've been told now or what we understand here, I don't know. Nobody here, none of the people that are here at the camp are very happy with the options that we've heard were going to be given or that are going to take place. But we think that we should be heard first and then maybe considered to reassess the options that are available to us. We were told that one of the options was possibly being put into SROs, like friends before us that were put into from Oppenheimer to one of the SROs. And I've I've heard kind of mixed views on that. Some of the people that are there are really happy with the assistance that they're given when they get there, which is one of my concerns here. Is I feel like a lot of the people are just becoming like kind of comfortable and ignored and out of sight, out of mind. Nobody's really working on their drug habits and getting a job, getting at real life, doing the things that we all want to do. But maybe some of us have mental illnesses or addiction issues that have stopped us. So I'm hoping that we can get something that involves a little bit of treatment offered to the people here to get a more long-term solution, because I know I'm not from Vancouver myself. I'm from Williams Lake, British Columbia, which is kind of a small community, and I'm pretty shocked to see some of the things that happen to me myself, even though I'm living right there in the core. I think the change of us not being there has been considerably good for the business owners and people that are on Hastings Street in the area where generally most of the homeless people were sanctioned there, or that's the only place we were left alone to live. It was right in front of business workers' stores, and trying to find use of a washroom for people is almost next to impossible because no business owners wanted homeless people using their washrooms. So people were actually using the washroom on the street, being tracked around, and disgusting diseases coming from that. So now that we're here, where I at least have the option of using an outhouse, that's probably stopped a lot of the issues there, like just theft and things that people are doing there to survive or get some food into them is probably maybe spread out at the most, or less visible to people in and around Hastings area. I think that if we are offered something with some treatment and a place to live and a little bit more geared to getting people life skills that they need to not fall back on drug use and not end up homeless, maybe have a job that they can keep themselves financially stable, then they could keep a home, and we won't have the problem again in the future reoccurring with everybody reassembling back on Hastings Street and then doing everything exactly what the problem was in the first place, which is disrupting business owners, disrupting the shoppers and the people that are there, and stealing from whoever needed to be stealed from, because people are going hungry and while the drug habits, I'm not going to deny that that's an issue. People are stealing to feed their drug habits. I think if we focus more on that and getting a comfortable living area and a community where everybody can kind of be a voice, not just get swept under the carpet here, where we're hidden away from the big view of everybody else, but yet nothing's getting changed. I mean, there's some really decent people down here. I've had the pleasure of socializing or calling my family for the past 3-4 months here now, and there's people that I don't think deserve to be swept under the rug at all, and they deserve to be treated like the rest of the Canadians are, using a regular bathroom, being able to sleep at night comfortably without being afraid of what's going on around them, or whether their pillow's going to be yarded out from them in the morning, and then all of their belongings that they've worked so hard to get. Even though I know people would be thinking right now, well, thieving isn't hard work, and that's pathetic that you would steal to. I'm not talking about the thieving to feed yourself or clothe or have a bed. It's about the hard ventures that you face when you are homeless in downtown Hastings Street, like psychotics and mental illnesses and people. It's a dangerous place to try to live, and I don't think anybody should have to live that way. We should all have, whether it even be from people who have mental illnesses being placed where they belong, people that don't have but have drug issues being placed where they belong and getting some treatment and getting better. I think one of the things that the people, my friends and my family and the rest of us here have been saying since the beginning, a slogan that we've used is a healthy community. Yeah, pardon? The slogan is permanent houses give healthy lives, help with healthy lives. I'm starting, and I forget how to put it, but I do know the meaning of it, and what it means is that if the rest of us are offered something healthy in life, it will save a bunch of lives, because the rest of us here are, even though we're drug addicts, we're not, we shouldn't be forgotten, because we all are brothers or fathers, sisters, mothers, we're all family members of the rest of the country, and we like to be treated that way too.
Yes, and actually, you are over time, but you do have questions, so
sorry.
you want to remain on the line.
Yeah.
You have questions from Councillor DeGenova. Go ahead, Councillor DeGenova, for up to 3 minutes.
Thanks so much. Just a very quick question. You had mentioned that you weren't, I don't know if this is the right way to characterize it, excited or in agreement with the options that we're asking staff to explore if we move forward with this motion. Would you say that that would mean that you would continue to try to live in an encampment in Strathcona Park or another park in the city of Vancouver or another unsanctioned area of the city of Vancouver? You don't have to answer my questions, but I really appreciate it as it helps me to make my decision.
Yeah, sure, man. I have no problems answering your questions. I think I can answer for myself on that as best I could answer. I think what I understand you're asking me is that, so if this goes through and if I don't like it, if I'm not in agreement with it or it doesn't work for me, would I just stay here irregardless of being told that I'm supposed to leave?
Or go somewhere else? Would you try and participate in another encampment that perhaps wasn't part of these guidelines?
Well, ma'am, I think I would have to say, of course, I will. If I have to live, I have to be somewhere. So, if I'm feeling like that's not a good place for me, or if it doesn't work, or it's really uncomfortable, then yeah, I'll be wherever I can be, where I can live amongst people that accept me, or wherever. Yeah, if it's another encampment, but I would try to be as respectful as I could about that. I always do try to do that. Like I understand public issues with it here. Sorry.
You've been very respectful in your comments today, and I also just wanted to ask you. I mean, sorry, I wasn't trying to put you just particularly on the spot. You can only speak from your own experience, but do you feel that others who are around you, from what you've heard from them, would also prefer to that they may, if they weren't happy with the options presented, when we go down this road, explore them and pick some? Do you think that they may be in that same situation where they have to find a way to live somewhere else, and perhaps that's in a park, Strathcona or otherwise? Okay.
Yeah, and I answered for myself at 100%. I could answer for everybody else in these conditions. Like I've kind of been a voice for my friends and family here a little bit because, not everybody can be heard separately, and they've just asked me to help with speaking on behalf of them, and I really do. I don't know if you've caught the drift in that, but I care about the people I'm with. I love them like my family, and their voice is telling me the same thing. Like I had a friend last night that was speaking and was really emotional about the fact that his family's been robbed. Basically, he can't go away and fish and work and provide for his family because he has to leave a wife here he's afraid to leave her alone. So, and I understand why. If he had a proper dwelling to live in, he could go away and work and provide for his family. So what he and the rest of the people are saying is, yeah, if it's not going to work, if it's going to be the same thing we've faced several years in a row and things that we already know doesn't work, then yeah, we'll find another encampment and try and socialize and be a community together there at whatever cost. But we really want to work with whoever we can to get. We don't want to be disrespectful. We don't want to fight with anybody. I know the police, they have an issue with coming in and being aggressive right off the get-go, and there becomes a fight. But we want to do things as politely and properly as we can. So, but I answer your question honestly. I think if we can't do it, if it's not proper living arrangements, in our opinion, then we'll find somewhere else if we're forced out of here. We always will. We have to have somewhere to dwell. I'm sorry that it is that way. Until I can get my drug habits and my friends get theirs taken care of, or any of the mental illness or issues from childhood, anything that's going wrong is forcing us to be using drugs and not standing up with the rest of the community healthily, then until we can fix those things, I don't know what difference it could be.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you
and the counselor, the counselor is well beyond time, but if you could keep your line open. My understanding is that there are three other people who are on that same line. So I'm going to go back because they were not present. And so Fiona York, then Desiree Strathcona, and Claudette Kennedy. So if you could pass the line to Fiona York, that would be great.
Okay, I will pass it to Fiona. Thanks for your time, guys. Really appreciate you listening to us.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hello?
Yes, hello. Fiona York, go ahead. You have up to 5 minutes.
Okay. So first I want to acknowledge that I'm respectfully on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Swilliters First Nations. My name is Fiona York. I've worked in the downtown east side for over 10 years, and for the last couple of years, I worked closely with many of the people living in Oppenheimer Park, Crab Park, and Strathcona Park, 10 cities. I'm speaking in opposition to the motion today, and at first I want to mention that there are a couple of incorrect premises in the preamble. So it does mention that the 2020 homelessness count found a certain number of people living unsheltered in the city. And this was done in early March, so this is actually pre-COVID, so the number would actually be quite a bit higher right now. So it's kind of working with some numbers that are not really accurate. It's quite a bit higher because people who could not stay with friends' house due to guest policies are now on the street, and also because there are more people unsheltered because shelters reduce capacity. There's also some stigmatizing and pathologizing language around health and violence around encampments, and not recognizing the efforts of Indigenous matriarchs and cultural support in the current encampment. Rather than funding more city reports and hiring outside agencies, what about working with those already there and who are trusted and who can identify what's needed and how to achieve it, and just need funding to get there? I'm sure at least one shower trailer could be paid for with the amount of money that has already been spent studying this issue and requesting staff reports. Most importantly, there's been zero consultation from the mayor for this particular motion, not listening to comments around vulnerabilities, housing people who are most vulnerable first, different levels of access, complex needs, and family situations that come directly from people affected. I'm finding that often we're hearing from people who live near homelessness encampments that's being reflected in the media and becomes part of the dominant discourse. They're accepted as speaking with authority because they live near an encampment or near people who are homeless, rather than people hearing, again, directly from people who are actually homeless or who are affected by the situation. Looking specifically at the options presented, so talking about renovating hotels and SROs, there's some questions that came from people staying in the Strathcona encampment about what exactly is being offered, because it's not really specified. So what is the definition of an SRO? What are the names of the buildings being renovated, the age of the buildings, and what area are they in? Is there harm prevention or support services or wraparound support being provided for those attempting to stay sober, rather than a one-size-fits-all approach for people who are sober or attempting to be sober? And what are pet rules for SROs, and what is the square footage per suite? Is it 100 square feet? That could be difficult for somebody who is living with a pet or living with a dog in that space. And would it include different levels of recovery, family units, etc.? And is there anything being offered that would be conducive to family reunification? Also, with this, talking about renovating or building, would it include 58 West Hastings, which is a building that we've been in a fight for over 10 years and is still sitting in a vacant lot and not providing housing? Regarding the idea of sanctioned encampments, once again, this entails more displacement and moving for people who have already been moved from place to place for years. Again, it doesn't include actual consultation about what is needed. If there was consultation, they might hear that what we would like to see is encampments that are Indigenous-led, trauma-informed, culturally safe, peer-run, community-supported, and government-resourced. So they would include shower trailers, washrooms, running water, warming tent, etc., not necessarily a state-run encampment run by a housing provider like an SRO or supportive housing that doesn't reflect diverse needs, independent living, and full suites. So in summary, again, these are all temporary solutions that are being offered. Permanent housing is what is needed. Housing saves lives. Housing creates healthier communities. The motion as it's presented speaks to stigma by not consulting, by relying on shelter mats and repurposed community centers and single-room hotels, fails to recognize the resilience and knowledge of what people have been saying for so long about trauma, cultural support, and need for having people involved in their own housing and considering diverse needs. So it makes this based on stigma and predicates the solutions offered in interactions, which is the same as the executive member of one civic party who encouraged people to harass the homeless in Yaletown. I'm glad to hear that elected councillors censored those remarks and distanced themselves from them. And I want to request that council censure or condemn Councillor Pete Fry for his vigilantism against a homeless person last month.
Excuse me.
He's actually encouraged repeated and violent vigilantism behavior in Strathcona around homeless people.
Yes. Excuse me. You cannot continue speaking. There is a point of order. Go ahead. I would have done this myself, but go ahead, Councillor DiGenova.
Chair Carr, please, because my procedure bylaw.
I've got the procedure bylaw.
Loading, but thank you.
DiGenova.
I was hoping you might look up the section that
I've got the section. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. York, you're out of time anyway, but I am just making it very clear that when you speak to council, all speakers, when they speak to council, must abide by our procedure bylaws and the rules of conduct. And those rules of conduct include Section 6.1, which is by words, tone, manner of speaking, or gesticulation, express any opinion or make allegations that directly or indirectly reflect negatively upon the character of any person or groups of people, or C, question the motives of a council member, or D, speak disrespectfully to another council or to a council member. So I'm just cautioning you, and you are out of time anyway on this matter, and there are no questions to you. But I wonder if you could please pass the phone on. I believe that two other people within the group that is there have indicated that they are there to be ready to speak. So if you could pass it to number 10 speaker, which is Desiree Strathcona.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Perfect. Hi, my name's Desiree. I'm broke, disabled, and I've been homeless. So anyway, I'll just jump right in. One of Mayor Stewart's 3 proposals was to get an assessment for the cost of government-sanctioned tent cities. In our experience living in tent cities and organizing with residents who've been in and out of government-regulated spaces, we know that proposals like these lead to miserable conditions for those of us living in them, as in SROs presently. We're forced to deal with regulation of our everyday lives so meticulous that residents have routinely compared it to living in prisons. Mayor Stewart is looking to set up tent cities like these SROs. Instead of being allowed to manage our own affairs like adults, social workers would take away our basic autonomy and decide who is and isn't worthy of staying in the tent city on that basis. We also know that having regulated spaces means autonomous tent cities organized that aren't run by government, are open to immediate violent destruction and dispossession. In fact, we already have that experience in tent cities right now, from the destruction of Anita Place in Maple Ridge to the much more recent destruction of Oppenheimer Camp. We know that even when we spend days and nights working to defend our streetkin from displacement, it's only a matter of time before cops decide to storm the camp and tear away our livelihoods. Sanctioned tent cities are just a permanent green light for cops to attack us and destroy our homes with prejudice without notice. What Mayor Stewart needs to understand is that we are not only suffering from a COVID crisis, we are not only suffering from the coming cold, we're suffering from a crisis of homelessness. We don't need sanctioned tent cities. We need permanent and adequate housing where we are free to live our lives without social workers watching our every move. In our experience, permanent housing saves lives. Thanks. That's all I got to say.
And there are no questions for you, but thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. Very appreciated. Yeah. Could you hand the phone on to Speaker 11, Claudette Kennedy?
Yep.
Thank you.
Hello?
Hello, is this Claudette Kennedy?
Yes. Claudette Abraham, actually.
Oh, Claudette Abraham. You're speaker number 11? Is that right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. You have up to 10. Sorry, I was looking at speaker 10. You have up to 5 minutes. But Claudette Abraham, you are the same person that registered as Claudette Kennedy as a resident of Vancouver. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. You have up to 5 minutes.
Hi, Madam Speaker. My name is Claudette Abraham. I am 45 years old. I am First Nations. I was in SRO housing last May. I took a trip to Winnipeg and came back 9-day trip to Winnipeg. Upon return, I was evicted from my SRO, non-payment of rent during the COVID season. And I found myself in the hospital blind. And when I got released from the hospital, luckily I got my eyesight back, and I had to come and live at the tent city. And I've been here since like June 15th, directly from the hospital. I'm looking forward to working with the counselors, like toward adequate housing. My experience in SROs hasn't been pleasant. There's been times when my life has been threatened, and the staff in the SRO wouldn't even allow the police, after I called them, to come up and take a statement from me. So from my experience in the SROs has been very frightful. I came to Vancouver to 2015 from Winnipeg. I was fleeing violence at the time. And I think Vancouver's a wonderful city. And I don't stand with the people that, they verbal assault on the police officers. I don't agree with that. And I haven't done so myself to verbally assault any officers in the city. I came here to hopefully find some permanent housing, feel safe. I'm hoping that new opportunities open up. In both elections, 2015, 2019, I was on Jenny Kwan's campaign. And first election, I did over 20,000 phone calls for her. I come from a rough life. And one of my promises to myself when I came to Vancouver was to escape the violence in my life. Other than that, I don't know, I guess our slogan being permanent housing saves lives. I'll continue with the group, and hopefully we can solve our conflicts together and find some good opportunities. With that, I'll end and have a good afternoon. Thank you for letting me speak.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate your words and speaking to us. Thank you. Okay, Council, I'm now going to proceed with the other people in the speakers list who were not here earlier. So I'm going to start with, my understanding is that those were the three that were in that group on that call, but I'm now starting with speaker number 13, who wasn't here, Jason Trudeau.
Jason
Hello?
Trudeau, if you are on the line.
Hi, yes, I'm going to pass the phone to him now.
Council, I'm now going to proceed with
Hello?
the other. Yes. Okay. Is this Jason Trudeau?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Okay, that's Jason. Okay, Jason Trudeau, you have 5 minutes, but could you please try and move to a situation where there's no background noise? It's quite noisy, and
Yeah. Sorry, I was just listening to your broadcast. I'm away from it. Does that sound better?
That's much better. Thank you. You have up to 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Right on. Hey, I'm just going to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm currently a resident of this encampment. I'm from Winnipeg. I have been coming to Vancouver for 8 years. I'm a commercial fisherman. And me and my wife came here, planned to come here, went on 211, talked to them about resources before we left Manitoba, and was given, yes, you can come here. And they said that there was resources to help for me and my 3 kids. So we took a year to plan it. We planned to come here. When we showed up, we quickly found out, there was no resources for 90 days. We had to stay here for 90 days before we could get help. So
couldn't find housing. We looked everywhere. We didn't come here broke, so our only choice was to end up in a hotel room. When we ended up in a hotel room, the months passed, and if anybody's ever spent a night in a hotel room, they know it's not cheap. Months passed. I'm running out of money. I struggle. I phoned the police department and I asked them what I was supposed to do. The COVID just started. What am I supposed to do as a father? They had no answer for me, so I ended up on the street. I'm a personal friend of Robert Epp. He spoke to you guys earlier. He told me to contact Child and Family Services. They got involved with our situation. Our kids are now in care, thankfully, because now me and my wife are residing in Tent City, stuck. Strathcona, I appreciate your patience, and I feel for all the stuff that you deal with. I live in Tent City. I am not an intravenous drug user. It's not a pretty place to be. Sanctioning a Tent City breeds violence, breeds drug profiting. It's not good. The three situations that you guys proposed to solve this problem doesn't help me in any way. Because number one, I can't have my kids in a hotel. CFS will say no. I can't have my kids in an SRO. CFS will say no. Where is my help? Sorry, excuse me. I need somewhere for my kids. I'm sorry. I'm desperate. Father, who? I don't even know how to put it. I don't want to be in Tent City anymore. Try and live in Tent City for one night. I'm a normal person. I work hard for my money. I'm desperate. Where's my help? Your guys' solutions? I don't even fit in. What am I supposed to do? Forget about my kids? Where's the answers? One of you council members should come down here, spend the night at Tent City in the dark because your EI check is stuck at the post office since Tuesday because one of their members got COVID. Protect everybody but the people at the bottom. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. And trust me, I am desperate. I do not want to turn the people, regular working jobs, into victims for money. But I want to be a father. I want a place where I can see my kids, be a dad. What's the solution? Where's the answer for me? I'm not an intravenous drug user. I sympathize for Strathcona residents, but maybe the mayor himself should nut up and come down here and spend the night in a tent in the dark. See if he can distinguish the difference between gunshots and cherry bombs. Permanent housing saves lives, and I need it worse than anybody. Anyway, that's all I got to say. Hello? Am I even on there?
Yes, you are, and
Sorry.
you do have it's fine. Thank you. You do have questions, so you don't have to answer the questions, but but I will advance Councillor Swanson, and she has 3 minutes to ask questions. Okay.
Yep.
Go ahead, Councillor Swanson.
Thanks so much for speaking to us. I think it's really important for all the councillors to understand what people are going through. Have you tried going to Carnegie Outreach?
Yes, I did go to Carnegie Outreach, and because I read the papers that you guys sent out for because I was at Crab Park, and you guys moved us from there, and I thought it was okay down there because we were fenced in. There was some sort of security, and we were out of sight. I understand there's this eyesore here, and you know what? You guys moved us, and you displaced us, but now we're here. I did go to Carnegie. I challenged that paperwork. You know what they offered me? Suburban. It's a skiddly bar on the Ave, down there on the east side. That was their solution for me and my family. I can't even have my kids there. I got a 14-year-old who's in Child and Family Services. I don't want him walking through the Lower East Side, stepping over, what everybody steps over there, to go to school every day. How is that fair for him? He's in Richmond right now, just starting a new school, and I'm stuck here because where is this? There's no help. There's nothing for me here. And
I think what's happened is now you've told your story to everybody, and our staff has been listening to it, and they want to help you. So if you could go back to Carnegie Outreach, maybe you could get some help in getting a place where your kids could come and visit at least.
Well, the Child and Family Services, the city engineering department took all our stuff last fall and for camping. And so we were basically, me and my wife had nothing. And Child and Family Services replaced all the stuff that you guys took, well, some of it. And they're like, well, my kids are on standby for us. If we had a place, we would have our kids. We'd be a family again. We started out a family of 5. Now there's just 2 of us. And the things, trust me, the things that I've witnessed and the things that I do to help out around here, to help your city, like cleaning up garbage or even helping victims of violence around here, like I have a big heart. I don't care what somebody's done. If they're hurt, I'm going to help them. And I talked to all the people here in Strathcona. I know what they're going through, but people need help. People need housing. Putting them in a situation where they're just going to run from it and end up in somebody else's park and somebody else's neighborhood is not going to fix it. Like, you know what? I rented a place here, and I went there 10 years ago when I first started fishing. I rented a place. I went to that same building, knocked on the door, management came. Half the suites in that complex are vacant because why? They're own only, and the property manager holds that right to force the people who own those suites. They can't rent out of them. I asked them why. I'm homeless. I want to rent my old suite. They said,
you could stop for a sec.
You guys
if you
could
go down to
and force the property managers to rent them out because the people could use the income.
Yeah. And actually, if the Councillor Swanson is now out of time, so perhaps if you want to contact someone in council after this call is done and this item is done. Right now, we do have to move on to the next speaker, though.
So if you could just go down to Carnegie Outreach, maybe Fiona could take you. It looks like our staff are really wanting to help you get a better place. So if you just push for that, I think I'm hoping something can happen good that's at least good for you.
I hope so, too.
Thanks for speaking. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Swanson. Good. Okay, thank you. Moving on, councillors, it looks like we have 4 people that are still on the line to speak. So I will be proceeding with those that I would like you to, in the interim, consider whatever motion you want to propose. And if somebody is on the line right now, if you could hang up your line because we can hear all the background noise on it, or maybe there's a councillor who has not muted, but anyway, we've got a lot of background noise. I'd appreciate that. And councillors, just to ask you to think about the motion, because of course this meeting will end at 5 o'clock unless there's a motion to extend it. Meanwhile, I will proceed with the speakers that we do have remaining on the line. And my understanding is that that three of them, I think, are on the same line. That's speakers number 14 and 15 and 17. So speaker 14 is available, John White.
John White, your line has been unmuted. Please state your full name and proceed if you are on the line.
John White isn't here.
Okay. Is speaker number 15 on the line, John Jagger?
He is not.
Okay. Speaker number 17, Angela Peterkin, or Petterkin?
Yes. Yes. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Angela. It's because this one is a bit faster, so I hear names faster. Hello?
Yes, is this Angela Petterkin?
I have to unmute the call, right?
Yes, is this Angela Petterkin?
Hello?
Yes, is this Angela Petterkin?
Scrambling. Wait, I got it. Hello?
Yes. I'm looking for Angela Petterkin.
Yes, this is Angela Peterkin.
Okay, go ahead. Could you try and move to a situation where there's no typing or no noise in the background? It's very hard to hear you.
Okay, is this any better?
Yes, that's better. Oh,
okay, thank you.
We can still hear the typing in the background. Somebody is, like, it sounds like they're on a computer, and there is still sound in the background.
That might be the leaves rustling in the park that we're in. I'm sorry. I'm trying to hold still and not create any background noise. I don't know if this is much better, but
right now it is. So go ahead for up to 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Angela Peterkin. I'm 29 years old, and I reside in Strathcona Park. I would like to know how long these sanctioned parks will be around. Are these the conditions that I have to work around for the next year or a lifetime? I want to say that I feel that my government and my community has failed me. The community's concerns and feelings of fear and discomfort is what I've been forced to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Along with these constant feelings, I have only a gallon of water to ration between approximately 300 people. I can't grocery shop for longer than a day. I don't have the luxury of turning out the lights when I need to go to sleep. I'm not able to lock my door, therefore I've lost my possessions several times. I don't have a readily accessible shower. It's the people of the community that are not homeless. It's the people of the community that are not homeless that are able to change these conditions, because they have a voice and we don't. Their voice matters, ours don't. And if the people of this community would stand up and fight for the community, sorry, I'm getting a little sidetracked here. If the non-homeless people of this community are the people who need to stand up and fight for their communities. Be thankful they have a voice and use it to make a change, so that their kids can play in these parks, so that they don't have to live in constant fear or be exposed to violence and crime.
Instead of treating us like animals and pointing and speculating when they walk by the parks or look out the windows, they need to take recognition of their roles in the community and let the government know that this is far too neglected of an issue that stems numerous other issues, and demand change. Sorry, I'm going to speak to that. Kind of scrambled here, but nonetheless, as long as the community chooses to use their voice to pass judgment instead of using it to make a change, this will remain an issue. And the government's order to make these sanctioned parks just ensures that the violence, crime, pollution, and all the other issues that stem from this park are now definitely going to be here and not going anywhere. If anything, they're now regulated to stay, and there's going to be no change. I guess that's all I have to say. I should have better organized, but thank you. Permanent housing saves lives, too. I want people to remember that. Thank you for your time.
And thank you. Yes. There are no people questioning you, so thank you for your time. Yeah, appreciate that. Okay, Council, we're moving on to the remainder of the list of people who are not here. So speaker number 20, Kylie Kennedy.
Oh, I'm so frustrated right now.
Perhaps whoever is on that line is
Hi.
Yeah, if I can. That's okay. And who is this
Thank
on the
you.
line?
This is the moderator. Kylie Kennedy,
Yes.
if you're on the line, your line has been unmuted. You may proceed. Please state your full name.
Kylie Kennedy, or Kylie K. Kaye, I think it is, isn't here.
Okay. Thank you. Speaker 21, Karen Lane.
Karen Lane, if you are on the line, your line has been unmuted. You may proceed.
Karen isn't here.
Okay, that's great. If we can move on to Speaker 22, Nathan Crompton.
Nathan, your line has been unmuted. Please state your full name and proceed.
Nathan Crompton. Can you hear me?
Yes, go. Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead for up to 5 minutes.
Okay, thanks. So I'm calling from Bandu. I'm here with members of Our Homes Can't Wait, and we've been kind of talking and thinking about this today, and thinking about all of the tent cities in the past couple of years. Twice evicted from 58 West Hastings, at least twice from Oppenheimer Park, Thornton Park, 10-year tent city at Main and Station Street, Sugar Mountain, Crab Park, and the list goes on, and that doesn't even include places where people are just constantly evicted for trying to survive. When I go through this list, I feel angry, and I feel confused as to why City Council thinks that this strategy is somehow worth pursuing. It seems like every time people find roots and make a community, City Hall turns around and tries to dislocate and displace the basic livelihoods and survival and community that people are forming. I don't have anything to say. I've spoken to City Council so many times on this. I don't know why you're hell-bent on doing this. at the very least, if you were going to provide some permanent supports or some actual funding or some real projects or some social housing that wasn't dismantled in a couple of years, or modular housing or some hotels that weren't evicted in a few years. I mean, we've seen this over and over. The people who were displaced from Oppenheimer were put in a hotel, which was then evicted. And the cycle just continues, I guess, until people die. I guess that's your plan.
Speaker, I have to caution you, please, to not impugn the motives of anybody or speak negatively or disrespectfully about council. So if you could refrain from doing that, that would be appreciated according to our rules of procedure. Thank you, and go ahead.
Okay. I mean, it must make you wonder when you're seeing that these tent cities are multiplying and actually getting larger, despite the overdose deaths, despite the monthly hundreds of people that we're losing in our community. I would think that you would start to wonder what's happening and start to think that the housing crisis is a bit wider and deeper than you're making it out to be. To read your motion that you're considering today would make it seem like this is some kind of side issue or some kind of small secondary thing that can just be solved with a few modulars or a few evictions or some shelters. I'm trying to understand why you don't see these numbers the same way that we are seeing these numbers. They're significant, and until council actually treats the issue on the scale that it needs to be treated, you're opening the door for every other form of scapegoating and victim blaming and anti-poor bashing and this kind of fake ass version of caring that I've heard from all the councillors, including you,
Mr. Crompton, I'm going to have to again interrupt and say that when you speak with council, you are subject to a code of conduct, and you cannot engage in improper conduct, which is also outlined in our rules of procedure, and do include not expressing opinions or making allegations that do directly or indirectly reflect negatively upon the character of people, including questioning the motives of councillors. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, I think it's...
And you are actually, if you can wrap it up.
To wrap it up, I think it's fake to say that you care when actually your strategy is to just chase people around with evictions and warrants constantly like it's a game.
Okay, that is your time beyond the 5 minutes. Again, thank you for speaking to us. You have no questions from councillors. Okay, council, I'm just going to move forward with those others on the speakers list who were not present earlier. So I'm going to move to Speaker 27, Katie Lewis.
That's me.
Yes. Oh, great. Okay. Yep. We can hear you clearly. So go ahead. Yeah. You have up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, I probably don't need 5 minutes because I've talked to all of the councillors so intimately on a daily basis for a long time. I'm in support of this motion, and I'm actually very sorry that you have to do this, because I don't think it's your job. I don't think it's your mandate. But I'm really proud of you for being the big sister in the situation. And I'm very encouraging of the provincial and federal government to step up and do their jobs too. So we know that in the last 12 weeks that our day-to-day life has changed dramatically. And it's not it's not funny business of, we're finding a bit of garbage here and there. We were finding firearms in our park. There is a drug turf war going on. Our kids are not safe, and children are a vulnerable population. We know that this camp has grown to be out of control. It is the largest homeless encampment in Canada. In the last 12 weeks, it's grown from 30 tents to more than 400, and it continues to grow every single day. And I am asking all of council to consider that factor. Winter is coming. COVID cases are rising. We cannot continue the way we are. And I support this motion because at least it's something to try and deal with the current situation. And before everyone accuses me of not caring, I go to the camp very often. I'm very well known there. I have talked to almost, not every camper there, but I've talked to very many campers there. The campers aren't safe, residents aren't safe, and kids aren't safe. And school has already started. So we have the biggest cohort of kindergarten students ever at Strathcona Elementary this year, ever. 25% of that school is kindergarten. And we know that there is disorder in the camp. We feel that when you characterize it as disorder is extremely misleading. People are finding guns in my alley, and they are trying to break into my home. This is not funny anymore. And we need to do something about it. And I applaud you for actually coming together and finding something and doing something about it. So I support this motion in every way. And that's it. I don't need 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much for speaking to us. No questions to you tonight. Thank you. Whoa, yikes. That was loud. All right. Council, we are at the point where there are no speakers left on the list that have either not spoken or are on the line. So we are the end of the speakers list. And at the point where we need to make a decision about whether we are going to proceed tonight with debate and decision, for your information, I would need a motion and a seconded motion. If we are to extend for debate and decision, I would intend to call a dinner break at that time, 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. If we continue tonight, it has to be a unanimous decision. I'm going to put it this way. It would be my recommendation. It would be a unanimous decision. Our procedure bylaw says that if a meeting continues on to 10 o'clock and to be able to continue with debate and decision in our procedure bylaw, it must require a unanimous vote. We don't have in our procedure bylaw something that would end at 5 p.m., but I think we should be consistent with the intent of our procedure bylaw, which is to debate and decide. We had decided as a council that every councillor should have the privilege of being able to exercise that right. So a unanimous decision is my call that it would have to be. The backup night, if we decide not to proceed, is this coming Monday. That would be Monday, the 14th of September at 6 o'clock. So I'm looking for a motion, and I see people on the list. Starting
Chair Carr?
with Council. Yes?
The time
yes,
to start would be at 3:30, not 6 o'clock.
Oh, at 3:30. Okay. So thank you for that correction. And Mayor Stewart, I'm advancing you as first on the queue. Go ahead.
Thanks. Chair Carr, thanks for a wonderful job today. It was really difficult. That's the toughest one I've seen so far, so good work. So the motion I'd be moving is that we recess and we come back 3:30 at Monday. We've got a lot to digest from what we've heard today and lots of amendments to consider that have been forwarded, so I would ask that we recess and come back at 3:30 on Monday to finish this.
Second, Councillor DeGenova.
Okay, it has been seconded. So, councillors, you're free to debate this, and I will proceed down this list in case anybody wants to debate that right now, who is on the list. But, Councillor Bly, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, I'm not supportive of the motion. This is in our calendar for 10 o'clock tonight. We got through speakers, I think, a lot faster than we expected. All of the amendments have been sent in that we know of so far, and there's a number of them from councillors, but they've been in for quite some time. And I think, given that we have a very full agenda next week, and likely many council members have a full Monday in preparation for that agenda, I don't see why we wouldn't take advantage of all being here for the special council meeting tonight and move ahead as planned.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Bly. Councillor Hardwick, go ahead.
Well, I support pushing until Monday afternoon at 3:30. I realize we have a lot of work ahead of us, but my preference is to wait until Monday. So I'll stand behind the mayor's motion. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Hardwick. Councillor DiGenova.
Thanks so much. I just want to thank the mayor for the motion. I know that this meeting, it's a special emergency council meeting. It was not criticizing the process at all, but because of that, it wasn't scheduled as far in advance. And there was a question asked in debate as to why we wouldn't do this. Well, I do have parenting duties as well. I could be on the phone, but it would probably not get as much of my attention as I'd be able to devote to it on Monday. So I do support that and appreciate Mayor Stewart's suggestion that we take this away and digest it. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor DiGenova, thank you. Councillors, I do not see anyone else on the queue to debate this. So, Madam City Clerk, I wonder if you can move us to a vote on this. Okay, that motion does pass, and those in opposition are Councillors Fry, Wiebe, and Bly, but it does pass, and so we are now, I guess I'll have a motion to recess.
So moved, Councillor DiGenova.
With us returning at 3:30 on Monday, the 14th of September. Okay, so there is a motion, yes, and I'll need a seconder for that, to recess.
Second.
Second. Okay, thank you. I'll just call for a verbal yay and nay. All those in favor say yay.
Yay.
Yay. Yay.
Opposed say nay. Okay, we are in recess. Thank you, councillors, and we will be reconvening on Monday. Thank you all. Thank you, staff, for being here and for also staff's willingness to answer questions earlier in the day. Thank you.
Thanks.